So we will get started. All right, today is December 2nd, 2025. It is 6 o'clock. We are doing our Zoom meeting remote. This is our town council meeting 25-25. I think we can skip the Pledge of Allegiance. I don't have a flag in my office. I don't know about you guys, but we can skip the Pledge of Allegiance today. We will do roll call, see who is here for our counselors. So Counselor Sparta. Did you say here? There you are.
Here. Sorry.
That's okay. Counselor Pillsbury.
Present.
Counselor Smith. Nope, he's figuring it out.
Present.
Counselor Lawrence.
Here.
Counselor Pilch.
Here.
Counselor Brown.
Here.
Great. And Counselor Benoit is here and present. We will have to do all of our votes by roll call today since we are remote. So our next order of business is to waive the reading and accept as printed the November 18th meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
Yeah, I have a motion to save, to accept the minutes as they are presented.
Second.
Chip. Any discussion on the minutes? Okay. Counselor Sparta.
Aye.
Counselor Pillsbury.
Aye.
Counselor Smith.
Aye.
Counselor Lawrence.
Yes.
Counselor Pilch.
Yes.
Counselor Brown.
Yes.
Counselor Benoit, yes. All right, and now moving on to announcements, which I did have up. Okay, so we have a couple announcements. So the town of Freeport is gathering input from residents and roadway users about safety and travel conditions along Pine Street. Your input will help inform future planning and safety improvements for all users, drivers, cyclists, and pedestrians alike. The survey is available on our website and the deadline is Friday, December 5th. The award for Freeport Citizen of the Year is given annually to a Freeport individual or community group that has contributed to the quality of town, the well-being of citizens, and the reputation of Freeport, that has caused measurable improvements to the circumstances of a significant number of townspeople. And unfortunately, folks who are employed by the town are not eligible. The name of the honored recipient or group will be permanently displayed on a plaque located in Town Hall so that all may remember their service and contributions. The deadline for submission of candidates is December 31st, 2025. All right, on Saturday, December 13th at 12:30 at the Freeport Community Library, New York Times bestselling author, historian, and award-winning journalist Colin Woodard will be giving a talk about his recently published book, Nations Apart. Copies of the book will be available for sale and signing after Colin's talk. This program is free and open to the public, and it is recommended to arrive early. All right. Any other announcements from folks? Okay. So we will move on to information exchange. So this is time for counselors to share information about committees or boards, any conversations with constituents with information to share, anything else that they feel like is worth sharing with the group. Does anybody have anything to share? Okay. So as usual, we have a couple of folks here to give us a few specific updates on committee work. Today, we are looking at some of the work done by the Shellfish Commission. We have two items. We have Charlie here as well as Emerson from the Maine Coast Fishermen Association to talk about the Working Waterfront Inventory Project. We had talked about this briefly quite some time ago. And I know that Charlie and his team have been working hard on this with Emerson. So I'll hand it over to either Emerson or Charlie. I'm not sure who will take it away.
I'll let you start, Emerson, and then I'll finish it up if you want to just give them a brief overview.
Yeah, that sounds good. So hi everyone. Nice to see those of you who I know, and nice to meet those of you who I have not met in the past. A brief, little spiel about the project that I'm working on. So it's a cohort-based project, so that means I'm working on it with a group of towns. Freeport is one of them. There are about 7 others. And the project is based around this tool that MCFA created a couple years ago called the Working Waterfront Inventory Template. The purpose of it is so that towns can have a, pretty comprehensive and also repeatable way of understanding what they have in terms of working waterfront assets. So this is useful in terms of measuring change over time. As we all know, I hope working waterfront is disappearing and a lot of it is threatened. So this is a great tool to try and, understand the access towns have and try to preserve it and plan for the future. I'm also sort of building out some curriculum around the inventory. So it's not just something that towns fill out and like sit on a shelf, but kind of trying to do some, education, and then also working with towns to figure out what they might want to do with this tool. It's a great way to start conversations within your community. It's a great planning tool. It's a great sort of just like educational tool. I've talked with some towns about making it into a story map for, not only showing the assets that a town has and what's important and who uses them, but also for recording, stories from people who may have fished in the community for a really long time. I think Charlie can share a bit more about specific work on Freeport's inventory, but I also would be super curious. I know that's a very brief overview, but if there are any thoughts either now or in the future from any of you about what Freeport might want to see come out of this as like a final product that I can, help put together once like Charlie and Greg are done with all the hard work of putting together the inventory itself. And I'm also happy to answer any other questions you might have about this work. But yeah, Charlie, go ahead and.
Yeah, as Emerson said, it's a pretty comprehensive inventory and study. It has everything from number of slips, number of license holders, and that's every sort of license holder in commercial fisheries, where to get gas, where to get ice, access to all points of, leading down to the ocean and Freeport, including private and public. So this is something that, me and Greg have been plucking away at. We still have a bit to go. Luckily, we had a little bit of help from Jessica Joyce, who was a big help with some of our commercial fishing aspects with it. It is quite the workload up front, but then once you kind of get everything entered into this sort of template that was created, you really should only have to maybe update it maybe biannually, which is nice. But like I said, it's still a work in progress on my end. Kind of in between tasks as we go. Luckily, we're kind of getting into the winter season, so we'll be able to prioritize it a little bit better. But yeah, like Emerson said, it's super helpful for planning ahead, prioritizing projects, especially projects that, will continue to support, working waterfront stuff.
You had also mentioned, Emerson, a working meeting or working group. Can you speak?
Yes. So that's just kind of an approach that some towns have taken. I'm really sort of leaving that in the hands of, the point person, which is most often the harbor master in each town. So, most recently I did a work session with Rob, the harbor master in Southwest Harbor. That's just kind of the format he felt would work the best. So we had, Rob, we had a fisherman, we had someone on their town council, and we had someone at their regional planning agency. So that's Hancock County Planning Commission for them, just sit down, and we chatted for 3 hours and filled it out. So that's like one approach. If the harbor master, which it sounds like Charlie and Greg also have some like momentum going on filling it out already, like that's great. I don't want to step in the way of that. But it's something to keep in mind in case like you just kind of want to fill out the perspectives, especially from people who have been like fishing for forever in a town, or harvesting, just kind of getting some more of that like qualitative perspective to fill out the inventory, I think is really important. So that doesn't have to be part of the initial like filling in the data. But if that's like an important piece for Freeport to include in maybe, something that the inventory can be turned into, that's something I'm more than like happy to also do if there's folks you all feel like you want included or perspectives or anything like that. It's kind of, it's not prescriptive. It's whatever the town wants to do with this, and whatever fits best. So I think that's, a conversation that, Charlie and I can have when we're nearing like kind of completing the inventory itself. But I think it's also great if, any of you have thoughts on it. Again, it's not prescriptive, like it can really be whatever you guys want. So yeah.
Any questions for Emerson or Charlie on the working waterfront inventory? Great. I think once it's closer to completion, I would love to have that come back to council. I think, the reason I've been so excited about this is we often talk about our waterfront as such a valuable, important resource in Freeport for many reasons. And this is a really good way to sort of quantify what it is and to, take inventory and then plan around that. So I think it's a great effort. And Charlie, thank you so much for your time and effort on it.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to come back. I feel like we're kind of planning to hopefully as a whole cohort be wrapping up inventories hopefully by spring. So kind of depends. But yeah, happy to come back. If you have any questions that come up or thoughts, I can, Joanna has my email, and I'm more than happy to talk with anybody. So yeah.
Any questions for Emerson or Charlie on this? Steve, Councilor Brown.
It's obvious that towns working together can share learned experiences, learned data, learned a lot of things they learn. It occurs to me that innovation is one of the more important qualities that we need in changing times. And I'm curious, Emerson, is that I assume that's sort of one of the things on your radar to see innovation right up close and then maybe share it. And I'm interested to hear you say anything about that notion.
Yeah, totally. I think that's one of the main draws of doing it as a cohort project. A lot of towns I think can, get very siloed in the great work that they're doing. Or think they sort of need to reinvent the wheel to solve some of their problems around the waterfront. Whereas, there might be a town just up the coast, the neighbor town doing, that's had a great idea or has done some great community outreach in some form. So that's something we definitely like acknowledged in designing this project. So one, pretty large part of the project is we're also hosting workshops for the towns involved. That usually entails, the harbor master, sometimes people on volunteer committees from towns, depending on, town managers, depending on who I'm sort of in contact with, to go to these workshops. And it's on, various topics. So we've had like shellfish access. We have one coming up about like educational outreach materials. We'll have one on sea level rise documentation. So there's all that's like a whole component of the project. And we've already seen some really like awesome idea sharing in that way, just to solve some problems. And just kind of to hear what towns have done already or what they're thinking of doing and what's worked and what hasn't. Another thing that I think will be exciting when towns have completed their inventories is to start to put together like the regional perspective. Obviously, because, we have, for example, Phippsburg and Harpswell are both part of this project. And, I'm sure that there's some interplay with like people fishing in both those communities that wouldn't be reflected if you had only done an inventory. And like there kind of is like crossover. So once we kind of have more of that data to start having the conversation of like, all right, how is this related between towns? How is this related on a regional scale? What can that help us determine in terms of like resource sharing? So towns don't have to be duplicative, and can understand better like oh, if we were to add this piece of infrastructure that we don't have, would people actually use it? Or are they just using it in a different town right over there? And that works fine. So I think that's, such an important thing to ask and something we're trying to address to try and, build capacity with towns. Because, a lot of you guys are working so hard and don't have, infinite capacity. So hopefully that's a way that we can address that in some small piece, at least in terms of working waterfront stuff. So
Great. All right, any other questions? All right, thank you very much, Emerson, for taking the time this evening.
yeah, thank you. Have a nice night.
You too. And then moving on to our second item, which is the Shellfish Commission update on fees for water quality and special project needs. So Charlie, I believe that's you again.
Yep, that's me again. So I know it's been a while since we discussed this, so I'll briefly try and get everyone up to speed on what the Shellfish Commission has been doing. So if you remember, I believe it was earlier this summer, Nelson and I attended Nelson's the chair of the Shellfish Commission. He may or may not be on this call. We attended a town council meeting with a research proposal from the Down East Institute, in which the Shellfish Commission was requesting funds from council to fund year one of the 3-year project. So the council did agree to help fund, I believe it was in the ballpark of $17,000 for year one of the project. But as things were kind of getting finalized, I think there was some maybe confusion of where that money was actually going to come from, whether it was what account it was going to come from. So we did look into taking it out of our water quality account. And this water quality account has accrued through the years with a surcharge with license holders license fees as they renew their license. And that's been going on since 2008. But again, the original purpose of this fund was for water testing and water quality purposes only. So before the Shellfish Commission kind of made that determination, we did hold a public hearing last month where we did have a number of folks from the public that did attend that meeting who were not so much in favor of utilizing these funds for the research project. But the Shellfish Commission ultimately did want to make a recommendation to council that they would be able to utilize those funds to fund this research project by the Down East Institute. So that's kind of more or less where we're at right now with it. Whether we want to maybe put this as an agenda item at a future date and discuss it more, or if you need any more information from me right now, or I'm just happy to answer any questions. Because right now we really don't have the funding for it, where the commission hopes to use it from that account, but it's kind of this area where it was designated for one purpose, but now we're going to use it for another purpose.
And so just to be clear, any change of the use of that funding would have to be approved by council.
Correct.
Yeah. Sophie, I see you thinking about it. Any thoughts or opinions from the council? Councilor Pilch.
2 questions. We talked about this a few months ago, but I don't remember the topic and the outcome of that discussion. So somebody could remind me of that. And then the second question is how much money is in that fund that we're talking about?
So the amount that's in that fund right now is just over $37,000. And again, that was accrued through since 2008 with a $30 surcharge tacked on to license fees that each individual license holder pays when they come in and renew their license. So it goes into that separate account. And then, sorry, what was your first question?
The discussion we had a couple of months ago, if you could just refresh what was.
Yeah, so that like I said, Nelson and I came to a town council meeting um, on behalf of the Shellfish Commission because they wanted to receive funding for this project, which um, we didn't have at the time, and we were kind of wondering where we were going to get it from, which was in the ballpark of $17,000. And then council did award that, but I think afterwards it was kind of, okay, where is this actually going to be coming from? So that was kind of the issue that we
Yeah.
had. So
So I think we had a staff issue where we asked about this as a project. And when we looked at initially, we thought, oh, here's your special project fund because of the way it was coded, but it's not a special project fund, it's a water quality fund. And these two things are kind of different. Um, so that's why I think the commission is back saying they want to kind of reclassify those funds. Legally, council can reclassify moving forward if you wanted to. So funds we receive in the future, if you want to reclassify the use of that. If we're going to look backwards, I'm going to need some legal assistance because if you accept money for a designated purpose, a municipality has to go through a process to change that designated purpose. And I've never done that in 25 years, so I will have to learn about that.
Yeah, and I see you, Counselor Sparta, but before you speak, I just want to kind of outline the three options that I see. So there's sort of three options of either we say, no, we're going to keep the funding as it is, and all future funding we receive from these license surcharges continue being water quality, or we can designate we keep all previously accepted funding as water quality for the purpose it was originally intended for, and then future funding can be special projects. Or the third option is what Sophie was kind of talking about. If we want to go back retroactively and change the purpose of the money, we need a little bit more time with council and sorting it out.
I do want to add one thing. The commission doesn't wish to deplete, whether this makes a difference or not, doesn't want to deplete, that obviously that whole $37,000. They wish to always keep $10,000 in that account towards water quality. But I just forgot to mention that piece.
That's helpful.
So it's not like they want to use, the whole thing on it.
Counselor Sparta.
Yeah, I am just curious, Charlie, were any of the people that were opposed to this that came to your meeting people that have paid into this fund in the past?
Yeah, all of them were. Yep.
Yeah. I I'm just of the opinion that, these people have, been charged annually for a certain thing, and then to take that money away and use it for a different purpose, I I would take issue with that. I would certainly take huge issue with it if I was one of those people.
How
Counselor.
much do we spend annually on water quality testing?
We haven't spent anything in probably 6 to 7 years, where we spent maybe close to $7,000 on a previous study that we did. It wasn't a study, but it was actually trying to reclassify area and figure out what was actually kind of a long story, but it was about 6 or 7 years. We used about I think $7,000 of it, and we haven't used any since. Kind of the intent was when you do have to do some of these, water quality, when you send it to private labs and stuff, it is very expensive. Um, so it can obviously chew up some of that money fairly quickly if we ever did run into an issue here in town.
Counselor Sparta, is your hand up again, or
Sorry, I just never lowered it.
that's okay? Any other thoughts from council? Yeah. So this is kind of just for information right now. I think, if we kind of want to sit on this and consider if we want to bring it up to an action at some point, that is fine as well.
Can I ask another question?
Absolutely.
So the project that we discussed, was there an issue with the amount of funding for all scopes of work within the project? Do I remember that correctly? Didn't we get a lower amount that we technically approved, but it wouldn't cover the entire scope?
Yeah, there was a bit of an issue with the way that the whole project was presented, in that it was both phases over 3 years, but it was also multiple projects within each year. And so what we were looking at that had a line that said project total for year one was really only one project for year one out of the three that were supposed to be happening simultaneously. So even if that money were available, it wasn't the amount that we approved wasn't enough for what was supposed to happen in the first year. So I think as we're going into the next budget season, I think we will need to have a more robust conversation about whether there is funding. If it's not from this source, is there funding somewhere else if we wanted to fund that whole series of projects?
Yeah, and I will say, just to share my opinion on it, I think there's probably value in having a special projects pool of funding in the future, but I tend to agree with Counselor Sparta that, if we hear that folks who have been paying into that fund for years aren't interested in changing what it's used for, then I think stakeholders and people who pay for it have quite a big part of that opinion for me. Okay. Great. Thank you, Charlie.
Yep, you're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Any other pieces of information to exchange before we move on? All right, then we will move on to the town manager's report. Sophie.
So I have a few things. First, just letting you know that we had Charlie out on the water at the last Coastal Waters Commission meeting. So the Town Wharf project ended up not going forward. It will go forward next month, and it will also be in front of the Project Review Board in January. We are hoping that that will leave plenty of time to be able to actually do the work. Wanted to just confirm that Brett and the attorney have sent in the TIF application for the extension. We heard back. We were actually very pleased to hear that Department of Community and Economic Development are feel like they'll be all set to give us comments in the next 2 to 4 weeks. So I was kind of happy about that. Also, just in case it's on anybody's radar, I just finished up the quiet zone renewal for Freeport. We are experiencing a unique situation with the silver bullets. We're emptying them. They got emptied. One of them got emptied this morning at like 7 a.m. Staff saw it being swapped out at West Street, and it was absolutely full by 11-ish, or nearly full by 11-ish this morning. So we're seeing extremely high use of those silver bullets, and we're moving them out as quickly as we can. But we're really trying to get messaging out right now, encouraging folks to go to Hedgehog Mountain. Some of the activity we're seeing I think will probably beget some investigation and some conversations about how it's being used and what's being dropped off. Want to let you know that Council Chair Benoit and I are going tomorrow night to RSU 5 for the regional leadership meeting with all of the leaders of within the school district. So we'll learn more about collaboration and I'm going to guess the budget process. I'm excited to announce that we have picked up a public works operator who has experience. Rick started with us about 2 weeks ago and seems to be fitting in well. I will tell you, he definitely got a workout this today. We also welcomed a new police officer, Logan Frost. This was last week was his first week. We're set to get him into the academy in January, which means he should be back ready to start field training in May. We have conditional offers out for a mechanic, a deputy public works director, and a police officer who would be replacing Mark Dorval, who is our kind of a steady force on the day shift, who's retiring at the end of the month. We hope to get this applicant, if they make it through the background phase, into the police academy in August, which means that they would be ready to start patrolling, or at least field officer in January of next year. We've gotten some feedback from a couple of counselors about short-term rental services through Greater Portland Council of Governments. Staff's been looking into that. Caroline met with folks. It looks like in 2024, when they looked at Freeport, it showed that they would expect us to have about 175 STRs. Right now we have 82. So the question that my detail-oriented assistant town manager raised for me is that when council adopted the short-term rental ordinance, the message that at least staff took away was this was not really designed to be a proactive enforcement tool where we wanted to go out and find all of these short-term rentals. In using software like this, it would really kind of put us in a position where we would be doing that. That's kind of the beauty of the software. It also, there's a cost associated with that I think, Caroline, were we looking at an additional, was it $5 or?
So the cost would be $20 per, we'll call it assumed STR. So right now, if they assumed we had 175, which would need to be updated because it's a 2024 number, we could be looking at $3,500 a year. If we have added more than that in the past year or out on the web anyways, we could be looking at closer to 4,000. We are going to work with GPCOG to refine that number a little bit, but assume $20 per listing.
So the question we have is this an other business discussion? Do we want to go back to ordinance committee to have this discussion? Staff really feels like we need some guidance before we move forward to make sure that we're staying in line with what the council wants.
Can you just confirm that how many complaints we've had with short-term rentals in Freeport? I believe it's 0, but I just want to make sure.
Since I've been here, I've not fielded any. We've had a couple of property owners who are not happy with the fact that the ordinance, so complaints about the ordinance, but not complaints about how the ordinance is impacting in the community that have come to staff. There might be complaints out there, but not that have come to staff.
And Sophie, when you say complaints about the ordinance, is that just people who are owners complaining about the need to register or the
So,
fees associated with it?
um, to register, the one perennial complaint that we got that they were working with Nick and were referred a couple of times to come to council. It's because his property is set up to host more than the ordinance allows. So the limit, I think, is 16. He's set up for more than that, but he's limited to 16.
Okay.
Counselor Lawrence.
Yes. But from the time this has been implemented, there have been 0 incidences, and we implemented it for an issue that had kind of already resolved itself. So, as you all know, I'm not a big fan of this ordinance, but if we want to make it harder to do business in Freeport or say something to that effect, this is the way to do it.
Can you remind me how many we have registered versus what our cap is?
So our cap is 300 and we have 82 registered in 2025.
Okay.
So if you want to think about this and give me guidance, next time we can absolutely do that. I just know that there had been some interest from a couple of different counselors to kind of evaluate this process. And now that we just want to make sure that it truly will do what council wants it to do.
Counselor,
Um,
your hand up again? No. No. Counselor Pilch.
Um, so I think if we want to keep the ordinance, it's a little unfair that, let's say, roughly half of the people are registering, the other half are not, and we just don't care. It doesn't send a great message to the people who are trying to do the right thing. I think we charge $100 per registration, so we're collecting $8,200 a year, and that was meant to offset the cost of administering the program. So $3,500 for a third-party service to help out seems in line. I'm not too worried about the cost. We can recap the reasons why I think it would be good to keep the ordinance, but I'll save that for our next discussion. But if we do want to keep it, I feel like we should at least make an attempt to notify the people who are not registered that they should be registering.
And I think that was a question that I had for Sophie when this came up a couple days ago was, you say it would be this much per year. Can we do sort of like a point in time, like we're checking to see what the compliance rate is? Like, because I think I agree with Counselor Pilch of, how do we do our due diligence to tell folks they should be registering if we don't know how to get to them and who's doing it. We don't know who's not registered.
So my understanding, and Caroline popped off my screen, but my understanding is that you sign up for the service, and as part of that service, they are scraping on a periodic basis. I don't know if it's how frequently that periodic basis is. And they actually send the initial violation letters for you. I've got a memo. I think my bringing it up in the manager's report is more about, I think this is worthy of a larger discussion. I don't know if it's an other business discussion. I don't know if it's if it's ordinance committee discussion. I don't know if it's finance committee discussion, because the thing to keep in mind is I 100% understand what Councilor Pilch just said, but for at least as long as I've been here, your budget has been built on this revenue coming in with taking care of indirect expenses, so already budgeted expenses. So if you pick this up, it's a new budget expense that we'll have to put somewhere. I don't know if that makes sense. And so I would just,
Counselor Sparta. You're muted.
Sorry. As Sophie was saying, there's a lot of indirect expenses like Nick's time that are already paid for from this fee. And I think assuming that we're going to get double the amount of people to register is probably not where we want to start basing our money decisions on. And I think before we make any decisions about whether we spend money, we really should consider whether we even need this ordinance at all. Kind of going back to what Councilor Lawrence was saying. Is there really a need for it? This I remember when this came to fruition and it was after the fact, after things were already resolved. And I don't know that there's really a need for it.
Counselor Lawrence, is your hand up?
Yes, it is up. I'm having trouble with my fingers here. Yeah, I've questioned whether we've needed this because one, there have been zero violations, and the reason you put a law into place is so you can control people that are causing problems, and unfortunately, it affects everybody. I do have a question for that software. Is it per property found, or is it per hit on a website that, let's say I have an Airbnb. I don't, just to be clear, but I don't, and I'm on VRBO and I'm on Airbnb and all these other ones. Is that going to be 3 or is that one charge? I don't need an answer now, but that's something to think about. But we already have a hard time with people coming to town, doing business here, particularly in real estate. I'm a fan of very limiting this particular ordinance or getting rid of it altogether. I'm for the get rid of it all, but I know that's not the majority sentiment.
I think from what I understand, I wasn't on council at the time, but it was sort of how can we make sure we don't let Airbnb or short-term rentals sort of become a large portion of our households here in town. I don't know if we don't know who's registered and who's not, if we're answering that question. I mean, I don't get the impression there are a ton of unregistered Airbnbs, but also I just simply don't know. So I think at least asking the question of is the ordinance answering the question we want it to? Councilor Pilch.
I think there were a number of reasons why we started discussing the ordinance. That was one of them. We had seen some towns where the number of short-term rentals proliferated to the degree that some towns were having trouble staffing all their volunteer boards because there weren't enough people who lived in town year round. We are nowhere near that. At the time, we didn't know if we would be or not, but we are clearly not there. There's some debate about whether it has any impact on the housing crisis if we take housing out of long-term rental stock and put it into short-term rental stock. I know there's different views on that, but that was one of the things that was discussed. Safety came up as a concern because some people were renting out. Here's an old school bus that I threw a couple of beds in, I put it in my backyard and renting it. And is that safe? Should we allow that to happen or not? Around the same time, I think I want to say it was an Airbnb and might have been in Mexico, that had burned and people died because they didn't have smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors. So there are some very basic safety things that we incorporated in with the ordinance. And lastly, a lot of it was in response to complaints from neighbors, where there were things like there are a lot of cars on my street. There's nowhere for them to park. There's not enough spaces in the driveway. The short-term rental, they're blocking the street. They're in my driveway. Potential, I'd say nuisance noise complaints, they were all resolved, but there were some issues with that. And one complaint that Sophie brought up about a short-term rental that was essentially creating a commercial establishment for wedding venues and other large events in a residential area that would otherwise have been prohibited. So anyway, there are a number of different reasons for creating it. If we don't need it anymore, we can certainly have that discussion. But I just want to bring to light that there were a number of different factors coming into it.
So to kind of answer your question, Sophie, it sounds like maybe it makes sense to send it to ordinance.
Okay.
Yeah. Does anyone have any other thoughts, or does that make sense?
Do you want to discuss it at other business? Because I'm sure there are probably more views than just the 3 people that would be on ordinance.
Sure, we can start other business or ordinance.
I don't mind starting the ordinance. I kind of have a feeling I know how it'll turn out, but I feel like we'll wind back at council either way.
I'm looking at my other counselors here, what they would think. Counselor Lawrence.
Yeah, I come back through ordinance. Obviously, a lot of the issues or a lot of things that are in that ordinance are already taken care of in other ordinances too, and that was something that came up. And the one complaint about the parking was it was a private road. We couldn't do anything about it anyway, whether it was uh, in a special ordinance or not. Anyway, there were some issues, but most of them, I would say 90% of them were covered in other ordinances that we already had. So, but bring it through ordinance, but I think we can have a bigger discussion about it.
Counselor,
Okay.
Go ahead, Matt.
I would actually like to propose we reverse the order. I'd like to have an other business discussion around what the intent of council is prior to sending it to ordinance to make language change to affect those changes rather than the 3 of us making our assumptions, putting something and bringing it back for review. I think it probably makes sense the other way.
That makes sense to me.
Okay, I will get that on. Probably it will be January because December 16th seems to be filling up quickly. I have a couple more just things that I need to tell you, and that is that Thai Garden is coming up for a liquor license renewal. This is part of our policy. Chris is telling me that we're just waiting for an application and fee, but everything looks fine there. Same with Grande Burrito. It's been issued, and the bake shop. So just so you're aware. The other piece is that council is the entity that selects the town attorney. We have a situation where our normal town attorney is Drummond Woodsum. But there is a conflict because Drummond Woodsum also represents Maine Water, and we have a cell tower that we sold the property to Maine Water, but we retain the rights to lease the cell tower. We have cell tower leases that need to be reviewed. Prior to me coming here, the town had really struggled with the attorney at Bernstein Scher, who's just way too overloaded and took a very, very long time to get things done. So I went back to Amy Chow, our attorney, and asked if I could get an alternative referral because there's I tried to get Drummond Woodsum just to represent us. Like, is there a way we can work around the conflict? And the answer is no. So she is recommending that we use Ben Lund of Brand and Isaacson. He has experience doing this very thing, and he's willing to take us as a professional courtesy with Amy. I just want to let you know, make sure it's well within our purchasing scope, but I want to make sure council is okay with this one-off use of an attorney. Because we have 2 cell tower leases waiting.
Why do they need to be reviewed? Aren't they relatively recent? And it's just a renewal, update the date, or are they asking to renegotiate?
One of them is brand new, and I'm not comfortable just signing it. They don't look this we don't use a standard lease.
Okay.
Um, so that's my hope is it won't take that long, but I'm not comfortable. There's some liability there that I want to protect us with, and they're not the same. Okay. We're good if okay. Two more things. One, the fire department had been in conversation with the Pownell Fire Department around an emergency medical service agreement, handshake agreement that Freeport has had with Pownell for a long, long time. Those conversations have kind of broken down. We're not even kind of reaching a midpoint of agreement. So I'm going to be reaching out to the town administrator. I don't know if that will then connect me with a select board member or if the administrator will manage it. But I feel like we need to have some further conversation and then bring this back to finance. But I don't know if this means I'll be at an open meeting or not. I just want to give you a heads up that we just continue to have the conversation with Pownell to try to get to a place where we're have some equity in this contract, some protection for Freeport residents, and to get a written contract for this service. And the last thing at the last meeting, we talked about getting notice from Maine Dot that our construction for the Mallet Drive multi-use path had been kicked ahead one more year. Then there was concern about connectivity on the other side and the need for more planning. Brett and Earl and I met with Maine Dot Planning, and they're actually fine with the level of planning that we have. They did not understand that we have a conceptual path kind of mapped out with complete streets and that they had done with the town engineer. And we have asked Maine Dot for some funding for some technical expertise just for that intersection of, at the end of the road between the Durham Road and the 120, 125, and then up the Palmer Road. So, the good news is that we have checked the box for Maine DOT and the funding moving forward, and also potentially put ourselves in line for some additional funding for that intersection to plan something safe there. And I have more, but I'm going to stop because it's getting late.
All right. Any questions for Sophie? All right. Thank you, Sophie.
I had a question from something that you said right at the beginning, but now I don't remember what that was because that was so long ago.
It'll come back if it's important. Okay. Moving on to our public comment period. Usually this is for in-person folks, but we will continue on like we are in person. So if anybody is interested in speaking, now is a good time. Again, this is on for items that are not on the agenda. Just ask folks keeping it to 3 minutes. I don't see anybody, so I will move on. All right, moving on to new business, item 147-25. This is for the consent agenda. We had several appointments over the last 2 weeks, and also we have a resignation from the Freeport Sustainability Advisory Board. Do we have a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
Yeah, I'll make the motion to adopt the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, any discussion on any of the items? All right, Counselor Sparta,
Aye.
Counselor Pillsbury,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Counselor Lawrence,
Aye.
Counselor Pilch,
Aye.
Counselor Brown,
Yes.
and Counselor Benoit votes yes. Okay, next is item 148-25. This is a public hearing for the renewal of a cannabis establishment license. Chris did introduce this last meeting. Anything to add, Chris, to your presentation last week or last meeting?
There is nothing to add. It's exactly the same. I'm not sure if Britton is here to speak on his behalf. Maybe.
I do see them on, but we can go ahead and open the public hearing. I see. Britton, you can unmute and speak.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can, yes.
All right.
I saw you had your hand up, but you don't have to speak, but I thought you might want to. I thought I saw your hand.
Oh no, I don't have too much to add. Just listening along.
Great. Well, thank you for being here. All right. Any other comments for the public hearing? All right, so I will go ahead and close the public hearing. Is there any discussion amongst council? Okay, Counselor Smith, could you please read the be it ordered?
Be it ordered that the renewal of a cannabis establishment license 0124M cannabis manufacturing and processing facility license and 01-24C cannabis cultivation facility license issued to Britton Deutsch DBA Taste Buds LLC located at 1456 US Route 1 be approved.
Second.
All right, that was Counselor Pillsbury. Any other discussion or questions? Okay, Counselor Sparta.
Aye.
Counselor Pillsbury.
Aye.
Counselor Smith.
Aye.
Counselor Lawrence.
Yes.
Counselor Pilch.
Aye.
Counselor Brown.
Yes.
Counselor Benoit votes yes. All right. Moving on to item 149-25. This is to extend our public parking facility moratorium ordinance. Just a quick recap. Our current moratorium as it stands expires December 23rd. We are on track, or it's in other business, to discuss giving direction to the planning board this evening. And that would put our discussion past the 23rd. So to continue our discussion and to sort of wrap up this process, we would have to extend the moratorium. And the manager has provided a good memo of our November 6th workshop, just to sort of remind folks that that was a conversation around the general parking landscape in Freeport. So this moratorium is for the paid parking moratorium, but we also know we've nestled this conversation into the greater conversation around parking as well.
Just a public reminder that I'm recusing myself from this item.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and I will open the public hearing. So if anyone would like to speak on this item, they can raise their hand. All right, seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Any discussion from council? Okay, seeing none. Counselor Lawrence, could you please read the be ordered?
You mean
Be it ordained.
Be it ordered. Yep. Be it ordained is the next one. Be it ordered that the renewal of no.
It's
That
be
the
it
extension-
ordained for this one.
Yeah. Be it ordained that an extension be of paid parking facility moratorium ordinance be adopted.
Second.
Okay. Counselor Sparta.
Aye.
Counselor Pillsbury.
Aye.
Counselor Lawrence.
Yes.
Counselor Pilch.
Aye.
Counselor Brown.
Yes.
Counselor Benoit votes yes. And Sophie, can you remind me, does this have to go to the state for approval or just okay. Okay, moving on to item 150-25. This is to consider the purchase of Scott Air Packs. I have Chief Bernard on this one.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Awesome. We were authorized in this year's budget $120,000 to replace Scott Air Packs. I did a presentation and spoke of we're replacing the actual pack itself. That's the piece that we wear on our backs, our regulator, our mask. The cylinders were purchased, replacement cylinders were purchased 3 years ago. So this is just the replacement of the actual pack and mask. What we're looking to do is purchase 22 units. We need a total of 26 as far as our seated positions of the fire trucks where we have firefighters sit. The air packs essentially are mounted there that they can don going to the call. 4 of those have been purchased with the new ladder truck. So we have 4 brand new air packs coming with the ladder truck currently. So we're looking at purchasing 22. With that being said, we had 2 vendors that we sent out a RFQ, RFP to that service New England essentially. So of the 2 vendors, IPS is Industrial Protective Services. They came in at a cost of replacing the 22 air packs at $144,698. And I'm sorry, they came in at 144,698, and Fire Tech and Safety out of Winthrop, Maine came in at $145,090. And with the $120,000 that we actually had appropriated for replacing the Scott Air Packs, that leaves a difference of $24,698 that I would like to take out of reserves that we have available to the department in order to make that purchase of the 22 air packs.
So I just want to clarify, Chief. It looks like reserved to you, but what you had said is you're taking 4 SCBA units out of money that was allocated to outfit one of the previous trucks that's still there. So it is capital money, but it's not technically a reserve.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Can you speak to the trade-in option? You just pointed out in the memo that the Fire Tech and Safety did not have a trade-in option.
That's correct.
Going with have a trade-in option?
So they had no, so for instance, with the old ladder truck and with the combination of replacing the old engine 1 and the new tank truck that was purchased, I believe 2.5 years ago, they consolidated 2 trucks into one. The old ladder truck had space available that it carried extra reserve Scott Air bottles on the truck. We don't have that space on the new ladder truck, as you all saw. Space is going to be very limited in that regard to have that storage capacity. So we actually have spare cylinders, if you will, that we won't be using. So what I asked the companies to do was essentially give us a trade-in. Those cylinders generally have a shelf life of 15 years, so we've already owned them for 3 years. So a prorated approach to that was that they actually are going to give us a trade-in for 20 spare cylinders. So they're going to give us a trade-in on those, and they're going to give us a very small but a trade-in value essentially of all the old air packs. And for us, it kind of gets rid of them, so to speak. It's not something we're trying to dispose of, or worry about selling to another department where they're technically not usable pieces of equipment anyway. So I see, I basically I see it, the fact that they came in a little bit lower with that trade-in value, and also the fact that they are taking that equipment that's not usable for the department currently.
Any other questions for the chief? And,
I just have a question to clarify Sophie's clarification, because the agenda says reserve fund. I understand it's part of the capital plan, but I'm just wondering if you can specify what the difference is for that, what the tank two fund is that's referenced regarding the capital plan.
So the tank two is the tank truck that we purchased. When that was budgeted, we budgeted for equipment. So when you have a purchase like that, we try to get everything done at the same time. There was a lag here, so we held the funds for that. So with this purchase, you should be at the end of that capital project, and whatever is left should lapse to reserve. So it looks like reserves, but it's really a capital project. So it's equipment for that piece of equipment that you had already approved, but it needed to be commingled with a larger purchase, or else we would have paid a lot more per.
That makes sense. Okay. Thank you.
Normally, we can hold those for about 3 years.
great. Any other questions? Councillor Pillsbury?
Yeah, so just in looking at the memo, just so I understand why the actual packs themselves, the outdated ones, would be a disposal responsibility of the town, and it's better to have the vendor give us any credit and take that off our hands. But you said the 20 cylinders still have a significant useful life. There's no secondary market for that. That would be easy for the town to recoup money on. Is that correct?
That is a possibility if we elected. Essentially, we're real close. So every 3 to 5 years, we do a hydro testing of the cylinder itself. So we're pretty close to coming up on that first hydro test that's going to be required, which is an expense every 3 to 5 years that we pay to have that done. So we're just underneath that window right now of actually having to do that to all the cylinders. But that is definitely something that I could pursue if you would rather go in that direction.
Just asking the question, because it seems to me that the cylinders might still have value, but I also don't know a lot about useful life and the origination cost versus what we could get for them, how onerous the process is, if there's any liability. I mean, there's a lot that goes into this, but it just stood out that we're getting trading value for something of value, and we're getting the same all-in price as the second vendor, but giving up that sort of the potential for value on those cylinders. So I just wanted to call the question. That's all.
Okay. Yep.
So I would just add that if we have them, we have to go through the expensive testing and maintenance of those. Bureau of Labor does not let us have them without that. I would be concerned about passing along something like that, but I've never done that. I've always traded them back in. So just because that's what I've done isn't what doesn't mean that we couldn't look at other. I think it's just a matter of the norm and also getting rid of the packs because that would be expensive. Those we can't give to anybody else.
How much is the testing? I mean, how much is the hydrostatic test of one can? I mean, is it the same as a scuba tank?
It's pretty close, Counselor
Oh,
Chip.
it's not. I don't think. How expensive is it? Is it like?
It's probably about 125 or $150 a cylinder, I believe, to have that done.
Wow, that's a little different than the consumer market. It's a lot less expensive.
Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, I've brought in tanks to have that testing done. They go through the same process as scuba tanks. And it depends on where you get them tested, but my experience is that that charge is $50, not 100 and whatever. Maybe it's the Freeport price versus the Lewiston price. I don't know.
Unfortunately, when you tag fire rescue to everything, there generally is an added cost to that as well.
Yeah, the liability is different.
So just kind of thinking about something Sophie said, it's you've never seen anybody resell them into a second market.
Like you said, I mean, we have them available. Essentially, we could reach out to our partners in the area and see if anybody is interested in purchasing them, um, and recoup more money in that regard.
So here would be my suggestion. I know council is not usually a big fan of tabling something, but if that is an avenue you'd like us to look at, I would want to do a little bit of research in liability, um, and just kind of the pedigree, like is there a downside to this? And also reach out to some other managers that might have more experience with this. Um, if that's an avenue you'd like to go in, I would suggest that we table this and wait because if you want to keep those 20 tanks, which I'm a big fan of downsizing the tanks. So, but for me, whether it's a trade-in or a different way of getting rid of them, I just would like to not be in a place of managing those tanks and having to replace them with brand new tanks later if we don't need them. Um, but if you're going to do that, it changes the price here, and then it would change likely the bid or potentially the bid. So I would really just prefer if you want us to evaluate that, we absolutely can. It just, my recommendation is that you table it, let us do that, and come back with either the same recommendation or a different one.
Yeah, I want to be clear that I think I'm curious about sort of like best practice. Is that something that is even considered best practice, or, are we kind of, is it a wild goose chase?
How much is a new tank?
The new cylinders probably are $1,500-$1,600 a piece now at what the cost is, replacement cost now. Yeah.
So
I think what they did was they kind of prorated it. They, if Freeport 3 years ago paid $1,200 a cylinder, so they've prorated it down to like a trade-in of $800 or $900 or something like that, I believe, of each cylinder.
right, and we're still getting and the two bids are the same. One is we're giving up
Right.
are pretty close. They're not exactly the same, but they're
Right.
Yeah.
Chief, can you confirm how long these bids are each good for? I just don't want to delay
Yeah.
when the price is good.
I want to say probably like the third week in December for the both of them. They both came in on the same day essentially. So they were looking at, I believe, a standard 30-day
Okay.
window for that. The only other aspect of this is that, and I think there's a note on there as well, is like if we order these this month, we're not going to receive the new air packs until March, just because of the supply and demand chain right now with everything going on in the fire service with this type of it's a newer model, Scott Air Pack, if you will, and everybody is buying them. So they're pretty popular right now. And like I said, we're looking at like March of 26 before we would see the new ones. We probably will see the four that we ordered when we took delivery of the new truck. We'll probably see those the end of February, middle to end of February for those four air packs.
Is there any way for us to, this is a question to Sophie, to modify the agenda item so that we can maintain the public hearing with a little bit less detail, and that way we still keep a timeline and it gives you and staff a little bit of time to figure out what to do, and then we can still keep it on the 16th?
Yes, I think if we put in the other bid amount rounded at an amount not to exceed. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, because it's just the amount, not the who
Yep.
we're awarding the bid to.
Yep. So if you said in an amount not to exceed, I just had that up.
145, 100?
Yeah. Yep. And just a quick look at Google does caution legal risk. So I just want to dig into that. I can call MMA. We'll have an answer by the 16th.
Maybe there's a secondary company that buys them and they do the certification of them.
Yeah.
Instead of selling directly to somebody else.
Yeah, I will just tell you the National Fire Protection Association, NFPA, has kind of a lock on a lot of this stuff, regulatory and otherwise. So let me just dig into that. If you change the wording on the be it ordered, you should be in good shape to just have the public hearing on the 16th, and we should be in a good position.
Okay. Councilor Pillsbury, do you have that?
Sure. Be it ordered that a public hearing be set for December 16th, 2025 in Town Council Chambers, 30 Main Street, Freeport, starting at 6 p.m. regarding awarding the bid for the purchase of Scott Air Packs in the amount not to exceed $145,100.
Second.
Great. That was Councilor Lawrence. All right, Councilor Sparta.
Yes.
Councilor Pillsbury.
Aye.
Councilor Smith.
Aye.
Councilor Lawrence.
Yes.
Councilor Pilch.
Aye.
Councilor Brown.
Yes.
Councilor Blunt votes yes. All right, moving on to our next item, item 151-25. This is to consider the extension of the expiration of the MOU between the town and FEDC. Sophie, I'll let you kick this one off and add as I see fit.
Okay, so we had another business item last month, I think it was last month, where talked about the MOU with Freeport Economic Development Corporation. I think at that time there was a discussion about how the council wants to take this up for a larger discussion so that this is not an every year event and that we can talk. You can kind of make a longer term plan. My understanding is everybody was fine with this moving forward. We just want to kind of circle back and get the paperwork that will support the expenditure that, at least in other business, it's my understanding everybody generally supported that. So instead of coming up with a whole new agreement, talking with Mary back when we were putting the budget together, the intent was for FEDC to just keep doing what they had been doing with us. I think you're going to have more discussion about this in the 3-year economic development plan that Brett's going to walk you through or talk with you about in other business. But the idea here is to just extend the date and renew for 1 more year, which will give us the paperwork to support the $60,000 expenditure.
Exactly. Any
It's all
thoughts?
process.
Yep. And I think just to kind of echo what Sophie is saying, we do FEDC is identified as a partner in the TIF plan. We've talked about how we want to make sure that we have a good plan moving forward. This is kind of just like in the meantime, making sure we're not disrupting the work that's happening. Any thoughts or questions from council? All right.
Can I just interrupt for 1 minute?
Absolutely.
The question has been raised about conflicts of interest when it comes to this particular item. And I will just say this is a volunteer board. Nobody on this council gets money from that board. So just because you're affiliated or are a liaison or are a current or past board member, unless you feel like you couldn't make an objective decision, unless you felt like you were biased, you have every right to vote on this item.
Thank you, Sophie. All right, Councillor Pilch, would you please read the be it ordered?
Sure. Be it ordered that the town manager be authorized to extend the expiration of the moratorium of understanding between the town of Freeport and Freeport Economic Development Corporation from June 30, 2025 to June 30, 2026.
Second.
All right, Councillor Lawrence seconds. Councillor Sparta.
Aye.
Councillor Pillsbury.
Aye.
Councillor Smith.
Aye.
Councillor Lawrence.
Yes.
Councillor Pilch.
Aye.
Councillor Brown.
Yes.
Councillor Benoit votes yes. Okay, moving on to public comment period number 2. We will just keep things standard. I will open up a public comment period for items not on the agenda if anyone would like to speak. Okay, we will close the public comment, which means we are moving on to other business. First up is policy guidance to the planning board regarding paid parking. So this is kind of the next step after we've had our discussions several times in other business, and then also with our adjacent conversation of the larger parking landscape in Freeport. So as we've discussed, we have the 3 options that Kyle and the planning department has put forth. Our 3 options are prohibiting paid parking facilities, allowing paid parking facilities, or to allow paid parking facilities with performance standards. I do feel like we were pretty close to alignment, but I do want to open it up for discussion to see where folks are. Great. So last I heard, and what I believe was our alignment, was that we wanted to direct the planning board to prohibit paid parking facilities. You're making this very easy.
It is, but I'm really conflicted over this one. I don't like telling people what they can do with their property. And the issue that we have is that we have these parking lots that are shared. And I think that's where the issue is. I don't think paid parking is good for the town because of where we've come from. And easy to come to town and it brings lots of people to town. But so I'm really kind of conflicted. I'd like to see kind of both, or at least some paid parking be available. But like I said, I don't think that's very good for the town. I think it would be the owners.
Oh, I think you muted yourself by accident, Chip.
Sorry.
Okay.
I think it hurts businesses. I think it would hurt the building owners if they did put paid parking in. I don't think you get as much traffic as we do, and we're trying to build businesses. But again, I don't like telling people have free and clear and don't have any encumbrances like a shared parking lot. What they really should be doing with their property.
Yeah, I definitely hear that. And I think the hesitation I had was thinking about how, I know from my like environmentalist sort of community development mindset, free parking sort of encourages people to travel by car. And that, isn't necessarily what I want to feel like we encourage, but we haven't built up that infrastructure for more walking and biking and other modes of transportation quite yet. And also, what I have come to the conclusion of is the reality of we can change this, but if we implement paid parking, it's impossible to walk that back. So while we also think about some of the changes in regulation that we've talked about in our workshop and otherwise that we're just sort of seeing come to fruition in downtown, I think right now it's important to make sure we see how those play out.
Why do you say it's impossible to take it away if we already have it? If we have it.
Because if we allow paid parking and then we change our mind and we don't allow it, those who charged for parking when it was allowed would continue to be allowed to because
we just did that though. We changed the regulations which affected people because they didn't need as much.
I mean, with this policy guidance. So if
I get it, but we had parking and we decided we didn't need enough. We had enough, so we changed what the requirements were, which effectively did what exactly you're saying.
So
But
when you did that, it allowed people to come in and get a recalculation for a more lenient requirement. That's parking. That's it. That is not about paid parking. Once you allow somebody to, if you lift the moratorium and you're enacting language in an ordinance, because we've all agreed, I think, that the land use ordinance needs to speak specifically to charging the public to park, whether it's allowing it with standards or not allowing it. And if you allow it with standards, and people come in and avail themselves of that, and then you discover this is not good for Freeport, and you change the ordinance, the people who have begun the activity can maintain that activity.
Okay, any other thoughts? Or are we ready for our official direction to update our land use policy around paid parking to prohibit paid parking facilities? I see one thumbs up. I saw another one earlier. All right. Great. Anything else that you need, Sophie?
No, just to let you know, I am going to work with Kyle tomorrow during the day. I will work on a memo to Kyle and the planning board directing your policy guidance of prohibiting. I will pull some other things in I've heard in discussion, just supporting that so that we can kind of limit some of the extra conversation and really go to what your guidance is. So just be aware that there will be a memo. I'll share it with council when it goes out.
Great. And I'm assuming everyone read the memo you put out today, but I do strongly encourage everyone to review the summary of the November 6th Town Council workshop, because that, I think, is there were some good next steps around general parking that are listed in there. All right. Moving on to other business B. So this is our FY 27 to 29 Economic Development Plan as presented by Brett Richardson.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I just sent a request to Tom. So I've got the next two items. Excited to share the Economic Development Plan. As Joanna just laid out, we're thinking about this in a 3-year window. And we can walk through some of the nuts and bolts, but hopefully you had a chance to take a look at the memo in the packet. And let's see if Tom can get this. Oh, I'm good now. Let's see if I can find the link here. I haven't used Zoom in a while. It's usually been Teams.
Did you find it?
Not yet.
You found the share button?
I found the share button. Huh. Let me see if I can go through a folder. Thanks for your patience here. No. I'll go this way.
Here, we can see your screen, just so you know.
All right, appreciate that. I will navigate down here. This is my presentations folder for you guys. Right. You see that?
Yeah. We see
All
that
right.
you selected.
But it didn't open up.
Oh, really? Can you see that now?
No.
Did you share the screen or this window?
It says you are screen sharing. I'll stop share. How's that?
Yep.
Got it.
All right. Good. Thanks for your patience there. Kind of a throwback to 2022, or 2020 actually. So I'm going to walk you through the plan. If you had a chance to take a look at it, I think you're going to find that it's really pretty similar to the work that we've done in the past. But just for folks who are tuning in, why is it important to invest in economic development? Economic development helps support a high quality of life in Freeport with employment options, helps to preserve the local tax base and keep it diverse, where we have a good mix of commercial and residential. By having good employers, good businesses to visit, it also helps to protect local property values, is attractive to employers and businesses by positioning Freeport as a great place to live, work, and play, and helps to maintain that or diversify our economic base. So it's really sort of a pillar of good municipal operations is to have a strong economic development plan that keeps the community moving forward with resources to invest in a great place. So the goal of this plan really comes out of the community's vision, the comprehensive plan that was just endorsed and approved, the downtown vision, even the climate action plan and the active living plan, not to mention the village corridor initiative and the transit-oriented development work that we're doing. And so our goal really is to help local businesses and employers to thrive locally. We want to attract new businesses, which we'll talk about in a minute, with a particular focus at this point in time on national and regional brands. We want to diversify our local housing options. We've talked a lot about housing, and the comp plan speaks to it quite a bit, how important it is to the future of Freeport. And so that's one of our big goals, is to diversify housing. Infrastructure is key. It's good for quality of life. It also shows the private sector that the town is investing in itself and is going to be a good partner through public-private partnerships. So our infrastructure is a key part of this goal, up to this plan. Multimodal transportation access. Councilor Benoit just mentioned the benefits of having visitors come not only by car, but also by bus or transit. We're well served by those amenities, and we need to maintain and invest in them. We want to attract visitors with diverse experiences and attractive places to visit and hang out. And we also want to provide and continue to work towards a business-friendly experience through coordination of codes and planning with an economic development lens. So those are our goals for the next few years, which I think are pretty consistent with what you guys have seen us carrying out over the last year or two. How are we going to fund this economic development plan? It's really based on TIF funding. Sophie just noted that our partner at Bernstein Sure has submitted the Village Corridor TIF, which you can see there, is hopefully going to be approved soon, and it repurposes a couple of older districts that were expiring into a new development program that allows us to invest in not only economic development, but public infrastructure and amenities that the town would like to see and has vetted in their plans. It's important to note that as we think about this budget, which we'll get into a little bit deeper later on in the presentation, the goal here is to give you a context. If we're going to have a certain amount of revenue to invest through TIF funding, which has advantages, which we've talked about, by using TIF funds for this purpose, we avoid county taxes and other things that would impact general fund revenues. So there's a baked-in benefit to using TIF funds for this activity. And then also, to give you context, what we're proposing here is an allocation of about 25% of the TIF revenue towards economic development, and about 75% reserved for public infrastructure and amenities that are prioritized on a rolling basis through the town's capital budgeting process. So we have revenues coming from the Village Corridor TIF. We also have revenues that from the Concord Gully TIF, which was the Bean headquarters update. And then we've also baked in some revenues for a new transit-oriented development district that we've talked about. And we anticipate that with some of the activity on Depot Street and other areas within the Village Corridor Initiative study area, that we're going to start to see some benefit in this in 2028. And just to be clear, that TOD, the new revenue, is based on 50% shelter rate of one project. And then we'll bump up over time as we see more projects come in. So relatively conservative from a starting point, but also you see it kicks in some support that's beneficial here. But the key takeaway is we've got these revenues largely in the pipeline, if not already accruing. And the allocation is based on 25% to economic development, 75% to infrastructure and other activities. The goals, what are we going to focus on? How are we going to spend our time, and what are the outcomes that we want to generate for the community and the taxpayer? We want to see 70 new housing units developed annually over the course of this plan within the designated growth areas of the comprehensive plan. What that means is that these will largely be on existing infrastructure. And we know that from the GPCOG fiscal impact analysis, that when we do infill development on existing infrastructure, we get a lot of benefits from that. And so we want to set a goal of 70 new housing units, not only throughout the town, but specifically within our designated growth areas annually. We want to help the commercial sector through a matching grant program that you're familiar with as FitUp, revitalize or update 10,000 square feet of commercial space annually. We want to act on some of the conversations that we've had locally about supporting local entrepreneurs through a program and some networking and some cohort and some training and technical assistance for local entrepreneurs, 10 of those folks a year. We want to successfully execute the Village Corridor Initiative. And what that means is that coming out the backside of this process, that the Freeport community with the council and Complete Streets and the planning board and all the relevant players have reached consensus on a vision for the corridor, including investment priorities. So that's a big goal for this plan, is that we continue to work towards consensus that allows the community to invest in updates that will move the community forward. We want to manage effectively our TIF districts and to support transportation upgrades, infrastructure, and private-public partnerships. Not only managing carefully the resources that we've already have in place and in the pipeline, but also being smart about that next district that we've talked about for the next year. And then to round it out from an attraction and marketing standpoint, this plan includes continuing partnership with the Freeport Economic Development Corporation with a specific focus on bringing to town annually 3 to 5 national or regional brands to diversify our mix of local businesses as well as cultural amenities. So that's the goals that we're focused on here as we start to think about the activities that we'll invest and carry out to execute these goals. Any questions about those goals at this point, or does that all make sense so far? Make sense? All right, we'll keep moving. So the core activities, there's a fair amount of detail, hopefully, within the document itself that was in the council agenda. But we want to focus on business retention and expansion, new development, entrepreneurship support, policy infrastructure and planning, and then marketing and attraction. BRE, business retention and expansion. I think you've seen a couple of examples of that recently with AEC Engineering and Maine Beer Company, two great local employers who were looking to expand. They needed some help with local land use ordinances. I think through the good relationship in the open communication pipeline we've had with businesses like AEC and Maine Beer and others, we understand their needs upstream of decision points for them about where they want to invest and grow, and then we can help remove barriers. So business retention and expansion is a big part of it, staying in touch with the local business community, understanding their needs, and getting ahead of it. Development, we want to facilitate new business and housing development. We want to be known throughout the region as a good place to do business through clear and predictable approval processes, high quality public infrastructure, and then targeted financial incentives. So we want to attract the kind of development that's called for in the comp plan, downtown vision plan, that will also support the climate action plan through dense infill development, as well as the active living plan. Entrepreneurship support. What we've laid out in this plan is an initial step to build a platform that we can build on. Essentially, we will leverage the free and pro bono technical assistance providers throughout the region. There's many of them. They're looking to support local entrepreneurs. We'll package up a program. We'll invite entrepreneurs in. We'll recruit a nice group. We'll work through a process of shared learning and have some fun. And at the end of that, we'll have a pitch contest with a cash prize for a judged, winner. So that'll be a lot of fun. I think it's a way for us to start the work that we've talked about for a couple of years on the Fit Up Committee, as well as the local chamber and FEDC, and just start a step in that direction and see where it goes and continue to leverage all the expertise that we have in Freeport. We were talking about it the other day, and there's a lot of great successful folks in Freeport that could be mentors, and an opportunity to create a program that not only supports local entrepreneurs, but pulls in some of these experts into the discussion will be beneficial for the long term. Policy, infrastructure, and planning. I think we're seeing that with the Village Corridor Initiative. We're seeing that with the support for the housing project on Depot Street with the stormwater support. We want to have good integrated land use, infrastructure, and financial tools that is at the council's disposal to make good decisions to support good projects. And then lastly, marketing and attraction. We propose in this plan to carry forward the relationship with FEDC for another 3 years based on their allocation over the last year for the support they provided. So that's the core activities. The budget, let me move my Brady Bunch screen so I can see that. This lays out in greater detail over 3 years the revenue. So the TIFs that we talked about earlier, the budget allocation, 25% to economic development, 75% towards administration and public infrastructure. Economic development is about $250,000 a year over the next 3 years. And then we would use that for staff, for grants and programs that fit up in the entrepreneurship work, as well as contracting with FEDC. To put it in context, that investment leaves for other uses close to $750,000 a year annually. And we're leaving that up in this to be discussed in further detail during the capital budgeting process. But it's also worth noting that we're very confident that we're going to be able to offset with TIF funds some of the staff administration from the finance director, assessing, town manager's office, and all the great work that Public Works does through managing these projects that are relevant to the TIF, that we can start to offset some of the wages that otherwise would come out of the general fund. So that's a nice advantage too. So this budget lays out a 3-year snapshot that hopefully shows you that we've got the revenues. We're being thoughtful about how we're proposing to allocate those revenues. We're investing in some good programs that we've seen traction with over the last couple of years with good partners, and that we're also being thoughtful about leaving enough of the pie for good infrastructure and to fulfill all the transportation, trail, and other work that we have in our pipeline. So that's the budget snapshot. And then the last slide that I have is the sort of allocation of staff time. So you can see it, those core activities all in one place. So business retention and expansion, staff expense, but no real program expense, development, sort of fit up grant program that we can use as a sweetener for businesses who are coming in, as well as technical support through the permitting and approval processes, entrepreneurship support, policy planning, and then marketing and outreach with our partner at FEDC. And that's essentially the presentation. I welcome questions if I can help with any answers.
Any questions or thoughts for Brett?
Yeah, Brett, I just want to be the first to say thanks for a really thoughtful plan. It's clear that it's not something you slapped together at the last minute, but that there's a lot of effort that went into it and a lot of thought. And I'm impressed by what you came out with. So I'm really thrilled about that. So thank you. And to anybody else who helped you do it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I should note that we drafted this up and then had a chance to discuss it with the members of the Fit Up Committee, which is former town councilor Jake Daniele, Joanna, Becky Doughton, really thoughtful group, as well as a gentleman named Richard Gorvet, who's pretty active in the entrepreneurship space. So a great committee there that provided really good input, and then also had a chance to workshop it a few weeks ago with Mary Davis from FEDC and Tawny from the Chamber, and then a discussion at the FEDC board meeting today. So there's a lot of collaboration that went into this, and I think there's a lot of comfort with what we're proposing to do and what the goals are that we can be successful together.
Yeah. Great work.
Yeah.
And I think you're doing a really good job at pulling from the work, you're building on documents and discussions and plans and pulling out the important bits for now. Councillor Brown.
Just want to say, holy mackerel, great job. The annual goals stand out as just quite bold. And you start adding these numbers up after year one, year two. It's real change in such an organized way. So kudos to your amazing efforts in corralling all the talent to come up with such a bold plan. So thanks, Brett.
I have two small questions. I think they're easy ones. One is the plan, especially for the budget, allows for some flexibility, right? So if in year two we say we want 30% for economic development instead of 25%, we could certainly do that during our budget process. Yeah. Okay. So you're nodding. Thank you. And then the other.
Sorry to interrupt. Brett is nodding. Sophie is saying no.
Oh, I'm
No,
sorry. Yeah.
the maximum we
Yep.
can have is the 25%. That's statutory.
Oh, okay. So there is flexibility, but that 25% can't be changed. Can't go more than that.
Yep. 25% is the max. How you want to configure that, or if you want to go lower, you could absolutely do that.
Okay.
Thanks, Sophie. That's a good catch. I think the other part of the question, outside the allocation of the funding, but the flexibility to learn and adapt, I think is, we want to be able to plan. We want to be able to have partners be able to plan with some predictability, but I do think that there'll continue to be space for learning together and adapting as we go.
Great. Second one's not really a question, more of a request to sit down with you and whoever else wants to join to discuss the activities a little more, especially on the entrepreneurship side, to see if there's anything I can lend a hand with. Having been involved with a lot of different similar programs, some of which were successful, some of which were less successful. So would love to noodle on that with you in detail.
Yeah, count on that, Dan. You were top of the list. You might recall we sat in, I think, the Chamber's office maybe 2 years or so ago with Tawny and Richard and Jake. So this is kind of bringing that back, putting some shape to it, and being action oriented about it. So for sure.
Yep. And I remember Tawny had a great idea for some kind of maybe we called it an on ramp at the time, and maybe this is what that evolved into. But yeah, no, that's great. Would love to look forward to the conversation.
Great.
Sophie, can I ask a follow-up question to your point of clarification? So within the 25%, do we have flexibility to spend it outside of the period of performance, like in the fiscal year? Or so in theory, 1 year's expenditures could be 20% and the next year could be 30%, right?
So
Question.
I've never done it that way, Matt, because I think you would want to have shown 25% and then make an argument to DECD, because it is cumulative, but you can't look at it like over the life of the whole 20 years.
Yeah.
So I would say you'd be budgeting a maximum of 25. And then if you got towards the end and you had years that you had used a lot less, you could probably make the argument. But I've never seen it done that way. I've always seen it done on a budgetary basis.
Okay.
For the economic development pieces, if you have infrastructure pieces, that just has so much more flexibility with the statute.
Thanks.
We talked about this, Brett, but I don't remember. The TOD, is that the same 25-75 split? Or is that a different?
It's a great question. We used 25% in this model.
Yeah.
We haven't pushed into that discussion just yet. That's a question to be determined.
Any other feedback or thoughts for Brett? Great job.
Thank you.
All right, then handing it back over to you still for the Village Corridor Initiative update.
All right. See if I can get my all right, can you see that?
It's your folder, your presentation folder again.
Ah, bizarre. How's that?
Yep, there it is.
All right, wonderful. All right, so thanks for the opportunity to share an update on the Village Corridor Initiative as well. We've been working with the leadership team for this initiative, as well as Complete Streets Committee and the project management team with Stantec and Matt Drost from Maine DOT to figure out some options for next steps. So we wanted to give an update on the timeline and some upcoming milestones, as well as offer up some options to the council tonight and hopefully get some clarity on the direction going forward on some projects for spring and summer of next year. So we'll put this into slideshow and we'll kick it off. So like I just said, the goals for tonight are really the project status, timeline, and then some planning and design options for the downtown intersections moving forward. So to give a quick reminder, the Village Corridor Initiative geography is roughly from Upper Mass Landing Road north of downtown, south to the Breeze bus stop, roughly in front of Maine Beer Company. It includes areas within a quarter mile of transit stops or within 500, I guess 1,000 feet of a transit corridor. So you see Mallet Drive is in the downtown Village area. We're talking about south of downtown in the Village Gateway area, and then looking north as well to the northern corridor. So that's the general geography here, which ties into a lot of the plans that we've developed over the last couple of years together. Here is an updated timeline that we're working on. So you can see that we have extended the duration of the project a little bit. And tonight's discussion around spring and summer projects will be informative. But the idea here is that we want to include in the final project, if so warranted, any findings from activities this summer, spring or summer. So essentially what we're going to be doing is working on the build out analysis. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. That will yield a coordinated development design. One of the big goals for this initiative is to understand what kind of development we could anticipate over the next 10 years, maybe the next 50 years, and make sure that we're being thoughtful about the transportation service with that, and we're planning for that. So the build out and the coordinated development plan helps us to think about what kind of development to anticipate for that transportation corridor. We're plugging away at that, anticipate sort of a draft that we can workshop together here relatively soon. That's going to feed into transportation alternatives. And then the idea here is that there'll be some more public input. We'll have a survey. We'll have a couple of meetings where folks can understand what's going on and share some thoughts. But you'll see this second to last row here, final report and recommendations. What we want to see is essentially a near final report by June of next year, which is pretty on track with our goal. But you'll note that we left some space to actually finalize that and submit to DOT through September. And that way we'll look at any projects we do in the spring or summer as a validation of what's in the report. So that's the thought process there, and being in touch with Maine DOT. As long as we stick to that rough time frame of early fall, then whatever report we generate, we would be in the pipeline at the right time for DOT to take these recommendations and figure out how to fit them into their work plan. So if we're looking at this initiative as a way to not only build consensus, but also leverage state and federal resources wrapping up on this time frame positions us to work with DOT to go out and do that. So that's the general time frame. Remember the vision that we've talked about, and the idea here is that we have a corridor that works for everybody, safe for bikers, walkers, attractive for visitors, and vibrant for local businesses. And so we're plugging away at that. You'll recall that we worked pretty hard in the fall to do a trial that was very informative at a number of levels. We learned that an all-way stop at Main and Bow did not significantly degrade traffic flow. So a key thing to build on there. We learned that there were real design issues and that we had an opportunity to learn from that. And hats off again to Public Works and Earl and his team. Thankfully, they were able to respond quickly to some of those issues early in that fall trial and mitigate them with quick adjustments that allowed us to learn. So we have really good confidence that we can learn from that and incorporate solutions into future designs for large turning vehicles, the location of pedestrian crosswalks, the appearance of what we do. We heard a lot about visual clutter with posts. I think moving forward, whatever we work on, we're going to be very thoughtful about how it's perceived and experienced. And that's a big learning from the fall. And then also great coordination with both the tour buses and the Breeze is critical. Not only did the flow from Bow onto Main dramatically improve, but we also learned a key lesson that trials, they take a little bit more time than you anticipate. So good things to consider as we look to the future. And so with that, we want to kind of lay out a few options for you to consider. Again, these have been talked about over the last few weeks with the leadership team, Complete Streets Committee, as well as Stan Tech and Maine DOT just this morning to fine tune how we could approach this. And the way I think about this is when we originally talked about this at the end of last summer, heading into the fall, we had an option at Main and Bow to do a full demonstration project with Jersey barriers, really configuring the intersection the way that it ultimately would be, moving crosswalks, and doing that sort of full on demonstration project. So I think of that as sort of one end of the range of these options for you. And then the opposite end of that range is for us to collectively say, we don't need any trials. We've learned a lot. We can render and sketch potential permanent design changes and have a good understanding as a community what that's going to look like. So the one option on the end of the spectrum is the full demonstration project. The other end is to understand what we've learned and to move forward inexpensively and efficiently on staff time, and put a lot of weight on renderings and landscape architect sketches. And then in the middle, there's sort of a hybrid to that, which would be to essentially move on from Main and Bow and trial and always stop at the School, Elm, and Main intersection, as well as to trial an adjustment to the traffic light at Mallet Drive. So those are the three. We'll talk a little bit more about each one and then give you a sense for some of the resources that the team has identified that will be helpful in terms of photo renderings and landscape architects sketches. So here's that full demonstration. This is a slide that came right out of a deck, I think, from late July of 2025. The idea would be to convert this intersection again to an all-way stop. A couple of key changes or differences rather, that what this depicts than what we experienced in the fall is that you'll recall this the approach on Bow to Main, that we had the center lane cordoned off with posts as a pedestrian island. And the traffic was tight to the curb next to Patagonia that was approaching Main. And what we learned from that or validated from that was that created some issues for large trucks trying to turn right tough clearance with a telephone pole right on the corner. A lot of confidence, or the assumption with a lot of confidence, that by moving that approach on Bow from the right tight to the curb to the center would alleviate that pressure, and make that flow much smoother. So we also would have the benefit of moving the crosswalk at Bow up to the intersection, as well as adding a crosswalk from Linda Beans on the south side of the intersection across to towards the flagship store of LL Bean. This is fairly labor intensive. Of the options, it's by far the most labor intensive. We would have Jersey barriers in the road, so it would have an appearance that folks might react to, and it would add a big lift to public works workload for the spring and summer too. So we just want to be transparent about the labor and the cost associated with this, but it would give the public a chance to see what we learned in action from the fall. The second one has to do, like I mentioned before, with the School and Elm intersection, which I think is pretty broadly understood to be a tough point on the corridor. The data reflects that. The School and Elm is considered by Maine DOT to be a high crash intersection. So it's been a focal point of the study so far. It would be anyway. The opportunity to do an all-way stop there would likely be a lighter lift than the Main and Bow intersection would be. And in the discussions that we had today with Stantec and with Maine DOT, we also have the option there, with some extra work, but arguably not too much, meaning painting the street. This could actually, Elm and School and Main, if it worked out as an all-way stop, that could be relatively easily converted to a permanent change if the community desired. So there is the idea of moving forward and learning something new, whereas looking at Main and Bow, arguably we would be investing in something that we've already learned about. This would be moving forward into a new opportunity to learn, and it also would have the added benefit of potentially being able to be converted to a permanent change if the community supports that. We would also look at eliminating some of the turning lanes and tightening that intersection up, so that we can see hopefully safety improvements. And I've heard about this intersection a number of times. It came up again recently at the project review board from a traffic standpoint. So it's definitely understood to be a challenge. And then the other idea that came up in discussion was to test an adjustment to the light at Mallet Drive, and to currently the preference, if you're heading north towards Mallet, the preference is on the northbound. And the idea here that Stantec has come up with as a worthwhile test would be to give sort of the preference for traffic flow to be that left onto Mallet. And there's an expectation that that could, most times of the day, help traffic move a little smoother. Sophie made the good point this morning that we would want, going forward, a camera to detect where cars are queuing, so that if there's different times of the day where traffic would like to behave in a different way, that the light is intelligent and can adjust its timing to facilitate continued flow. That's a good technology that's available to us. But the idea with this one really is to sort of build on what we learned at Main and Bow, move northbound, and then test School and Elm combined with a light tweak at Mallet to understand better that part of the corridor. So that's option 2. And then option 3 is really, no further trials at this point. Let's utilize renderings and landscape architect sketches to get a view for what these permanent design changes would look like. So those are the 3 options. Here is an example of to give you a sense of the quality and what the community would have to look at and experience to get render input on. This is a photo rendering And this is the type of thing that we discussed at the leadership team, and we discussed with Complete Streets as probably a really good tool for Main and Bow in particular, because that's a fairly complex intersection. And this, gives folks sort of a lifelike view without posts, without visual clutter, without the stuff that comes with a test or a trial or a demo. This would give folks a clean view of what that would look like and help them understand how they would experience it. So that's an example of a photo rendering. And then we also have some examples of a landscape architecture sketch where you can see underneath the sketch, there's actually, a real life image of the area that a landscape architect then sketches on top of to show how things would change. And so we would like to use these tools regardless probably of the scenario that you select. But this gives you a sense for what's available to the community to make good decisions without doing more trials or demos on the corridor. And we also have a budget that was discussed with the leadership team and then was unanimously endorsed by the Complete Streets Committee on the 18th. And this gives you a sense that, this is somewhat a la carte. So we would have the opportunity to sort of renegotiate this a little bit, but this fits into the appropriated and approved allocation for the Village Corridor Initiative. And we also have the benefit that that figure there, that 20,000, is matched 1-to-1 by Maine DOT. So the town expense here is half of that. So those are the tools that we have, and the idea would be that we would want to do some design work potentially with new demonstrations if that's where we'd like to go. But regardless of that, it's going to be valuable to do a photo rendering of Main and Bow, to do at least a landscape architect sketch of School and Elm in Maine. And then we wanted to reserve some additional resources for needs that will come up. For example, the railroad bridge project south of downtown. That could lend itself very well to a landscape architect sketch for the community to understand. But there are other areas as well that could also be very, very valuable to have a sketch. And so we wanted to leave a little bit of flexibility in how these are represented, so that if we move forward in a way that we learn something and we adapt and we change, we've got some flexibility to be able to help the community understand what that would look like. So these are the resources that we would put in play to go ahead and move that forward. And then lastly, the next steps, if there's hopefully there'll be some discussion on the three options. But to give you some context for where we're going from here, in the next month, we're going to be moving around pretty quickly here to move from sort of the pre-work and the analysis and the planning that Stantec has done, and start to share that and start to make decisions and move forward on it. So January 13th, we're going to have Stantec do another presentation to the Complete Streets Committee with some initial transportation corridor concepts. On the 14th of January, we would like to host a special Village Corridor Initiative workshop and invite the planning board and the council with a particular focus on the build-out analysis and what that means from a development standpoint. Earlier in the day, we'll be sharing some initial data with some of the property owners in that corridor as well. We want to be very sensitive to their goals and ideas and how we represent their parcels. And so this workshop later in the day will build off of that prior event there with property owners. And it also ties in really well because the planning board currently is working on zoning updates to the commercial 1 and commercial 3 zones, which encompasses the sort of the southern gateway area of this study area. So there's a lot of synergy here, and we'd love to leverage that on the 14th. And then on February 3rd, the thought would be to have another workshop with Complete Streets council and maybe even the planning board to really start to see how the land use side, the build out, connects and integrates with the transportation side. So the 13th, we start to focus on the transportation elements, moving towards, real actionable ideas to respond to. January 14th, we focus on the build out and the development, and then we bring that together on the 3rd for a great discussion about where we're at and get some input on how we want to move forward. So those are the next steps that we're excited about. And with that, at this point, it would be really helpful to get some guidance or to understand any additional informational needs that you might have to see what makes sense moving forward for the spring and summer. Having a good understanding of that now or soon will be important to keep the project on track so that Stantec can go to work with DOT in town to move these things forward and stay on this timeline. So with that, open it up to discussion, take any questions.
Thank you, Brett. You're busy these days.
It's fun. This is good stuff.
Yeah. Any questions for Brett or thoughts? So just to be clear, you're looking for guidance on, if you could go back to the slide with the options of what you're looking for guidance on, that would be helpful.
Yep.
Councilor Sparta?
Yeah, a couple questions, Brett. So if we do the School and Elm intersection, if we go to the School Street like four-way stop idea, how would we do that without already having an all-way stop at Bow Street?
It's a great question. We discussed it at length today, and that was a question that I posed to both Stantec and DOT, and there was a pretty unanimous, almost immediate response that there would be a lot to learn from School and Elm combined with the light tweak at Mallet, that those two things together would yield data that would be valuable. We have a good sense that the always stop at Main and Bow slowed traffic a little bit, but also kept it moving consistently and predictably. With that understanding, the idea really of this second option is to focus on how that then would interact with School and Elm, and then also how that would interact with Mallet. And I think there's an assumption baked into that, which I witnessed during the Fall Festival, and that is that during one, if not the busiest day I've ever seen in Freeport, the Main and Bow always stop was moving consistently, but the Mallet drive stop light was backed up all the way to Justin's Way almost consistently. And so by learning how to better manage the Mallet drive light, not necessarily wholesale changes, but to see if we can make some positive throughput with a light tweak combined with slowing down and making School and Elm more safe and predictable, that you would see that benefit that we witnessed on the Fall Fest flow from Main and Bow all the way to Mallet. And that what the benefit of that is that you would see that backup at Mallet start to shrink. And so folks would move consistently through town. Does that answer your question?
It does. So question 2, you and I have talked about there's a lot of data that we didn't collect when we did our little demo with the stuff in the streets that got hit and then got put back up in better places. And like I felt like we learned a lot of great things about that, but what we never captured is the effect that it had on other streets. All these streets work together, and I think I know like what it did to my street, and I think I know what it did to Park Street, but because we never actually captured that data, we don't really have a measurement, right? And that would be my issue with not doing the full demonstration project. You know, what I've been telling people up and down my street as I walk my son's dog. Um, you know, we're going to have another demonstration and we'll be able to look at things like that when we do our other demonstration project. So I don't know the answer to that question.
That's fair. I think that's a good observation. That's frankly why we wanted to have this discussion tonight, I think, is that there is a sense that I've heard clearly articulated from thoughtful people that doing another demonstration could add confusion, that we've got folks who got accustomed to the always stop and now they're not, and there's some confusion there, and concern that introducing another layer would only confuse the matter. And then we have the perspective that you just articulated, which is that there is some benefit to, running it back and doing it again. I guess the question I think that I've heard debated as well is to do Main and Bow again, because to do it full on would be fairly expensive. It would be labor intensive, and it would also be harder to be nimble in changes because we're talking about Jersey barriers, not posts, and that a lot of the issues that folks had with the demonstration at Main and Bow arguably boiled down to visuals and how confusing the posts were and the signage and all of that. So I think there's value in both perspectives. The question I think we need to answer, or at least I'm curious about, is where we fall on that spectrum of a cost benefit. And
Well, it's tough to be nimble when we put in curb too. I mean, right, if we just go ahead and do this without doing another demonstration, without making an informed decision, that's potentially pretty darn expensive as well.
Yeah, it's a fair point.
Is there, I just might, is there any other way to kind of understand the impact? Is there modeling? Is there technology or software that helps with, like, I feel like there has to be traffic modeling software out there. Or we don't have to actually build it physically in place, but we can understand flow.
Sophie's hands up. I don't know if that's because she has something to offer.
So there
it's
is traffic modeling software. I would just say you have to take into consideration it's using the inputs that are given to it. So just like when Stantec drew the initial design that we had issues with because they used some of that very same modeling software for turns and things like that. But no, we've seen that. I used that when we were looking at putting a roundabout in the town I was in before, and it's interesting. It shows choices. I will say that it is likely anything that you do to slow or change traffic patterns on the throughway of Route 1 is likely going to push people to seek alternate workarounds. And so I think you really need to I think that's a conversation to have. You're going to push more traffic onto West Street, South Street, Depot Street, East Street. And when you do that, the question becomes what's an acceptable amount, right? And to make some of the changes you're talking about for the Route 1 in the village, you are trying to slow traffic down to reach some other compatibility. So I I think we kind of know what will happen, the degree to what it will happen, I'm not sure, and I'm not sure how valid the modeling will be. I think it will give you an idea, but it isn't something that I would feel comfortable standing up here and saying, this is what it's going to look like.
The only thing I would add to that is there are fundamental differences between this plan that Stantec sketched out and ultimately what was put in the ground in the fall, that were not fully understood the impact that they would have. And I think I can't stress enough, but in particular, having the approach on Bow towards Maine be tight to the curb created a series of issues that became a domino effect that essentially Earl and his team kind of chased around the intersection. So, for example, what that meant was on the southbound approach off of Main, that by being tight to the curb, the truck had to, pivot out wide, which meant that that sort of cascaded into where the tour buses stopped because it required an amendment to that area to accommodate the turn. So, I think that there's a consensus that that move in and of itself would be very beneficial and change the experience of the intersection for a lot of vehicles, including buses and trucks and larger vehicles like that. So it's a tricky one. There's no question about it, Ken. You're kind of putting your finger on a key decision point.
Counselor Smith.
I just have a couple comments and then a question. I have been one of the people that has been advocating to do something in terms of a demonstration at Elman School, because I see that as a major issue for people coming from the east side of town, trying to get to 295 is coming up School Street and trying to get onto Main Street. And there aren't a lot of other good alternatives for that. There are some. But I would think that if we were able to make that intersection flow better for folks coming off of School Street, that might in fact take some pressure off the alternative routes of going to East Street or going up Upper Mass Landing, or some other things, that if the shortest route was a reliable route that you could actually get through off of School Street onto Main and then onto Mallet, that if we could get that traffic to flow better, that might actually take pressure off of those other streets. I also think that if we do not do the light adjustment or something in terms of management of the Mallet intersection, that no matter what we do on the rest of Main Street, that will get blamed, because really what's backing up is the Mallet intersection. And that was certainly the case with Main and Bow, where folks were frustrated because traffic was backed up on Main Street, and the obvious thing in front of them was the three-way stop, but in fact it was backed all the way up because of Mallet. The question I have for you, Brett, is I thought, and this may have changed again, but I thought that there was an issue where we were not going to be allowed to use the Jersey barriers in this test as originally planned. Has that been clarified with MDOT?
Yeah, essentially the way I think we've landed. So if you go back to the sketch here, there's concern about where the crosswalks land. So for example, you can see the one, if it's moved up off on Bow up to the intersection, flush with Route 1, not tucked back, and you didn't have barriers, then you would have pedestrians sort of out in the roadway without much protection. And there's other areas along that. It'd be the same coming across if we were to learn. Essentially, the only way, if you put a crosswalk from the flagship to the LOB to Linda's restaurant, you'd have a similar instance where you'd have pedestrians sort of out in an area that is is not barricaded, and there's concern about that. And so chasing the solution around, you kind of come back to where you started, and that is that it's really tricky to do a light version of this trial. We tried that in the fall with posts, and there were some issues that came out of that, and that to attempt to try to do a hybrid, again, would be challenging. There was some discussion about sort of like fake curbs, for lack of a better phrase. There's delineators that are 6 inches high and they'll protect a bike lane. There's still some interest in trying to explore that, where you could do a true change of the intersection in a way that didn't have the visual clutter. But nobody that we pushed on that a little bit today, and it's a great idea, but nobody could point to an example that was actually approved and could meet the Federal Highway Administration. So we haven't given up on that entirely, but it's looking unlikely that there is a solution there that allows us to do something without full barricades.
And then the other thing I would just point out is that this version, there is an additional change here besides the activation area, which is that third crosswalk that's being added. And I do think that's important to call out if we're thinking about that as part of the final design. That has not been tested because that was not part of the trial last year, and so that that double crosswalk is just a whole other change for people in terms of what they're looking at for pedestrians too.
Yeah, so to that point, there I'll share this for your benefit, but one of the ideas that came up would be essentially installing sort of fake asphalt curbs where they would go. The idea was it would cost 75 grand. It would have sort of a dubious appearance, but you would have an opportunity to truly delineate the intersection. And the assumption would be that those asphalt sort of curbs would last 2 to 3 years. So there's a world in which you could allocate that kind of funding. We probably need to bid it out for staff capacity, is what I've gathered, and expertise and just technical ability. And then with that material and that type of application, and you could test that and then potentially have it remain in place for a period of years until you could get to a point of construction. We also asked the question, just so you guys understand the scope of the conversation, is there a way where not only we say we've learned what we could and we don't want to move forward with renderings, we actually want to go ahead and see if we could build this and install it. What would that cost? How long would it take? And through permitting and right-of-way analysis, and probably some survey would be required. You'd be looking at probably plans, I think it was fall of 2027, and then construction of fall of 2028. So we try to push on that angle too. So to bring it back, Eric, to your question, I think it sounds like if there was a desire to avoid Jersey barriers, the most clear answer I have heard would be to install sort of fake asphalt curbs where the ultimate curb would go.
Just to clarify, I thought that there was a concern that MDOT would actually not allow us to use the barrier, to even use Jersey barriers.
As long as, I didn't mean to cut you off if you had more to say.
No, that was my concern, is it, because I understand why we would need barriers of some kind. I thought that there was a concern that Jersey barriers were not going to be allowed.
No, it's a good point. They are allowed, but there can't be a blunt end. It has to be sort of rounded, which is tricky. You've now got to, you've got to figure out a way to change that angle and mimic a curve that's difficult with fixed pieces. So it would be challenging. And if it was installed and, God forbid, we identified an issue that was truly an issue, this would be night work to clarify as well. To install this stuff is happening in the night. And the nimbleness and the responsiveness that Public Works was able to act with in the fall, it would not be as nimble to try to tweak this. So it's something to be aware of.
Dan.
So a couple of things. I guess short opinion is that I'm in favor of options 2 and 3. Meaning, yes, I'd love to see the renderings and sketches. And I do think we should trial something at the School and Elm intersection, because I agree that intersection is arguably more problematic and would benefit from seeing if a stop sign would work there. The Mallet Drive prioritization makes a ton of sense to see what we can learn from that. And I think it would help what I saw as one of the bigger problems that we uncovered this summer. My ask there is that I thought we were also going to look at potentially redesigning that intersection and even some of Mallet Drive, or at least looking at some alternatives there. So I would hate to see us tweak the light and say, yeah, that's better. Okay, we're done with that. Check it off and move on to the other intersection. I still want to see what that could develop into. I feel like that part of town is a little underutilized and would love to see some options there. So I don't want that to stand in the way of the traffic light thing, but I think that could be I'm hoping that's still on Stantec's radar to do something like that. For Bowen, Maine, I was where Ken was, right? So people were giving me lots of feedback. And part of my response was, well, next spring and summer, we're going to test something different and better. So hang tight and we'll give you another chance at it. So I don't like to move forward and not do that. However, in talking through what it would look like, it's another temporary trial, right? So Jersey barriers, fake curbs, traffic cones, whatever it is, I feel like people will react to what we put in the street and say, I don't like what I see. I don't like what it feels like. So why bother? And a lot of the benefits that we're trying to get with reactivating the spaces, fixing this tiny little sidewalk in front of Patagonia or Alpine, a lot of those things aren't really visible when we do the trials. So we get a lot of the negative impact. We don't see any of the positive impact. So I'm afraid that we'll get a negative reaction for the wrong reason. So that's why I'm hesitant now to do the Bowen Maine trial the way it's been envisioned in the sketch that Brett showed in the presentation. What I do wonder about is when we get closer to the vision for that intersection, right? That was a key catalyst site, the intersection of town, main town square, all kinds of things were said about that intersection, the potential thereof. And the activation space that we talked about in front of Linda Bean restaurant, right now we could barricade it off and move the crosswalks and we could say, great, now you have some asphalt to activate. It's not a very compelling space for anybody to hang out in. So I know that there are sketches of what we'd like to do there. Active public space, maybe public art, maybe seating, all kinds of stuff that we have dreamt up. The closer we could get to that, the better. So I know that doing that full on is probably millions of dollars and years away. But I guess here's where I land on it, right? So in addition to School and Elm trial, in addition to the traffic light test, in addition to sketching out Mallet Drive improvements, if we take the time to sketch out more fully the vision for Bowen, Maine, without doing a trial this summer, and we say it's a $5 million project or more, could we workshop that in future years? And either we get tons of support and everybody says, I love that, I can't wait for that to happen. Or, hey, that's a cool idea, but is it really going to work? And they're like, okay, maybe we need to do a trial. But we have that specific vision to test out, right? So it's not so much a traffic flow that we're testing out, because we've done that. what I feel like we want to test is like, is it worth it? Is this vision worth it? And I feel like we're not quite ready for that test yet. So that's kind of where I stand. And then the last thing I want to say is related to that, which is that a lot of the feedback I got on our last trial was informal, ad hoc, emails, phone calls, passing people in the street. And one of the things that was consistent was, where was the workshop? When was the workshop? Did I miss it? Was there a thing? And I know that's part of Stantec's plan. That I saw there's one of the work streams is public input, and I saw some complete streets and council and planning board stuff. But I'm hoping that we'll have a big-ish workshop in the spring or summer when we can have this discussion that we're having now with everybody else in town and say, look, here's what we've learned, here's where we're going, and have it be something that people can also provide feedback if there are opinions on whatever we try out at School Street or Mallet Drive, a place where people can come and talk about it. And hopefully we have some pretty pictures to show as well. So that's my request.
Yeah, that's great, Dan. I appreciate that. I went back, if you can still see my screen, to the public
Yeah.
involvement, the work plan. And I think the idea is that if we can make good progress in the next couple, 2, 3 months on some of these designs, renderings, plans, that we'll be shifting at that time into sharing that with the public and with a survey. Which one do you like? What don't you like? As well as some meetings and some, direct opportunities for folks to engage in person.
So
So
maybe in that May
yeah,
timeframe or so.
I appreciate you calling that out.
Yeah, great.
Anything else? Thank you, Brett. Any final thoughts? Okay. Lots to think about. Thank you. Okay. Moving on to other business D, the 2026 Town Council meeting schedule.
So next month, next meeting, we're scheduled to take care of some housekeeping things, committee assignments, and one of the things you're scheduled to do is adopt a 2026 draft council meeting schedule, understanding that things come up as best we plan and prepare. There are always curveballs, but in general, here we kind of lay out the dates that we want to try to save. And Chris Wolf does such a great job keeping us organized, but she came to me with questions that I can't answer. Questions like, are you going to have district meetings this year? If so, are we going to have one in each district? Are we going to combine districts? How would you like to do that? Are we looking at 1 or 2 Bustons meetings? We're thinking council workshops seem to be a place that council actually gets a lot done. And should we just hold a date at the end of each month? And if we don't use it, great. But if we do, it will be there that everybody is held in their schedule. And are you also looking to have towns, boards and committees, workshops like we did this last year? We did it a little bit differently this last year. Did that work for you? Do you want us to adopt that same kind of calendar to do it?
So you proposed some really good questions. I think we can go through these. So the district meetings, the first year we held them, we've done them twice now. First year they were mostly well attended. This year we saw a little less so. So the question you've posed is continue doing them separately or combining districts?
In the past, we combined them,
Yeah.
and that worked out pretty good because then you didn't have 4 of them, you had 2 of them.
Yeah. That makes sense to me to do that.
For 2 years in a row, District 3 has kind of had a pretty full house. And so would you be looking at doing like 3 and 4 together and 1 and 2 together?
I think
Something
that makes sense.
Okay.
I'm not opposed. I'm also not opposed to doing them individually, only because each of us tends to only go to one meeting. So other than extra burden on maybe Sophie, who would probably wind up going all of them, either way, I'm showing up at one extra meeting. So I definitely like having them, even if they're lightly attended. And I have a feeling that District 1 will probably wind up having a lot more attendance this year, given all the stuff that we just talked about for the last 30 minutes.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to share if people want to combine.
I
Okay.
think we can combine this year, and then this will be the year everyone comes, and then next year we'll split them up again, then nobody will come. So I think we're probably just chasing a balance we'll never really find. One
I
thing,
think, sorry, go ahead.
but no, go ahead. I was going to change the topic.
I was just going to say, I think to Dan's point, and I think this is apparent in District 3 that I think it really does have a lot to do with, are there issues that people are concerned about in that particular district? And sometimes those are hard to predict. And I certainly couldn't say in December what people will be concerned about in next September. So it's hard to say.
I think though that if we combine them, then everybody knows what's going on, right? Not just district. I don't know a whole lot of people in District 4 that know what's going on in District 3. Not that they really care, but it'd be nice to know. So I kind of like the idea of intermixing the groups together, because then you get more of a picture of what's going on in town, just not our individual fiefdoms.
So responding from a planning standpoint, not a quality of conversation or perspective, what you've shared, but from a planning process, would it make sense for us to schedule in one for each just district meeting, just hold it, and then as we get closer and we talk about what the content of the meeting is, you might be able to have conversation and might decide to drop one or two of those out
One thing
and
that
combine.
one thing that's not on here is if we want to do a barbecue again.
Yeah.
That's another meeting, another touch point.
Do you want to do a barbecue again?
I like your other idea, Sophie, before that one goes away, of just
Yeah.
holding 4 dates and then canceling 2 if we need to.
Okay. That just seems like it honors everybody's conversation here. It just punts it a little bit, but keeps the schedule good. Okay.
Well, can I throw a wrench in that? Because I actually think that then if we move from 4 to 2, it will create dissatisfaction because, if we're holding it on the schedule and then all of a sudden at the last minute, or not at the last minute, but as we get closer, we say, no, we don't really need that. Then it becomes well, is there nothing going on? Like, what are the district priorities not important enough? I think we should make a plan and just execute it, because like Joanna said, we're going to be chasing ourselves on this. And I do think that, we had a period where we didn't hold district meetings, and then we did, and there was some demand, and I thought the conversation was really good. And maybe it's not an every year, or maybe every other year it's a separate meeting, and the alternate years it's a combined, and there's a slightly different focused or agenda. I don't know, but I think we should kind of stick with something and execute on it. And maybe that's even a potential question to ask at the meetings coming up for this next year. What's the best way for us to communicate and to serve the needs of the individual districts?
So as a new at-large member, If we have 2 meetings, I'll go to both of them. If we have 4, I'm not going to all 4. So just saying, I get to meet with more people that way. So
Yeah,
let's do 2 meetings and a barbecue because I'm always up to eat.
Councilor Brown.
District 1 meeting was ill-attended because it rained like cats and dogs, and you can't control the weather. And another thought is, if you combine two groups, where do you meet? Where's the neutral ground? I mean, I think the whole idea of holding on to 4 meetings makes a lot of sense.
Well, when we did in the past, we did the community center.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I can go with any of it, but hey, Ken, going to 4 meetings isn't that hard. It was really fun.
If you go to 2 either way, you're meeting with the same number of people. If you go to 2 combined or 2 of the 4. Or I guess back to your point, if you're going to 2 combined, then you get to all 4.
There's usually food at all of them, so.
Yeah.
So,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, since we're coming up to 9 o'clock, I'm just wondering, this is something good that people might be able to think about, and for the purpose of the draft, can I just put 4 in and then let you guys talk about it? And if you want to take 2 out and combine, we can do it at that point.
That sounds good. And I think in terms of the barbecue, I think it went well. I think people liked it. I think it might be worth putting a date on for that as well. We can always
Make it a little later, though.
We'd I don't remember where it was, but we had talked about doing the barbecue again. And then also before that doing maybe like a service day where we take one of our properties and do some maintenance if people want to volunteer and go out and clean up trails, do stuff like that. Um, that could be another way for engagement and just to support the community.
Good call. Yep.
Sounds like a special projects committee.
It always is. Buston Island. I think if we host them again, it would be nice to do something with more, dare I say, interest. Not that town hall isn't not town hall is interesting. I love town hall. But if we do host them, maybe doing something a bit more exciting.
Yeah, I think we had sort of thought that they might stay for the meeting, and I think that was originally the idea. That didn't work logistically in terms of them getting back to the island. So I think the purpose of having it at town hall on the same day as a meeting probably wasn't
Yeah.
didn't meet everybody's needs.
I can get them back to the island. Just saying. As long as they're willing to stay till the end of the meeting.
I'm just wondering whether that, I mean, we did that once. I'm not sure that we need to do that every year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think we get a lot of FaceTime on the trip out there. It was really helpful. I mean, I think what we got the most out of at that meeting was the recap of the public safety day. And I think we got some interesting feedback about that, but I'm not sure that we covered a lot of other ground.
I'd also suggest talking to Bob, if he's still going to be the chair of their overseers, see what they think.
Yeah.
And they're always welcome at a meeting.
Yeah.
They don't have to come for the whole time. I guess it comes down to what is the purpose of this particular meeting. I mean, I'm not opposed to inviting them over, but we're just inviting them over to say, hey, we want to hang out with you. I don't know if that's really what we should be doing.
Yeah, I agree. And a lot of them are here for a limited amount of time throughout the year, and they probably covet their evenings and their time. So
Yeah.
Maybe every few years we invite them out.
I think I'm hearing some consensus there.
Yep. So we're gonna maybe not do this year and yeah, think about it in the future.
But still want to do an annual trip to the island because that's
Yes.
Yes.
gotcha.
Okay, council workshops. So this is what you were talking about with the council workshops being held. I personally, I know we all are, we want more meetings in our lives, but I think it's a great idea. I think it's good. It was a good observation that we do well in workshops. They're good spaces for like idea sharing and free flowing conversation. So I think that's a good idea. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I think. Go ahead, Dan.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Eric.
Here's an idea. I mean, we have a meeting every other Tuesday. Some of them run long. Do we need one every other Tuesday? And can we do a workshop in lieu of a meeting?
I know Yarmouth does something similar. I feel like we I already wish we had more time.
So
Yeah, that
I think
would-
we'd be stacking up public hearings too if we did that.
Yeah.
So I came from a community where we only met once a month. And when you have a super active council, it makes it so hard to maintain that good communication with between the council and staff to make sure that we're on the right page for people who need licenses, for public hearings, for to get work out of committees. I see your whole rhythm here as really kind of being around too. And I was trying at one point to kind of make it less one meeting a month so that we could have more other business time or maybe not go quite so long. And I haven't really been able to do that with any kind of certainty. So I'd just be kind of nervous of the unintended consequence of that. But you guys make that decision and I will make whatever work.
Well, I'm not saying don't meet. I'm just saying have
This
one
was
potential workshop.
Yeah, this was a light agenda and it's already 9 o'clock. So I just want to point that out. Councillor Pilch.
Yeah, I like holding the fourth Tuesday just in case we need it for a workshop. Just scheduling wise, it makes it easier. My only ask is for the annual goal setting workshop. Personally, I really liked having that elsewhere at the library, even on a Saturday morning, because it kind of was a more relaxed feel. It's probably a little bit longer than a typical workshop, and I don't feel as stressed to get home and go to bed after a long day at work and then doing a workshop. It's a little bit different feel. So that for that one workshop, I prefer to do it on a weekend offsite.
You really like Caroline's caprese salad. We know.
Free coffee, so that's what I'm in it for.
There you go.
Wasn't it nighttime when we did it?
It was.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm thinking the year before, I guess, or 2 years before when we had one in the morning.
Yeah.
Bagels and stuff.
Nice.
But either one.
Councillor Smith, did you have something else to add?
I was just going to say I like having a reserved time that we can slot things into rather than trying to scramble to find a time for the workshops. And I do think the more we could put into workshops rather than other business, if it is just going to be a conversation that's not going to have an action item, I think we could be a lot more productive if we had a lot of those conversations earlier in the evening at a workshop than at 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
And to your point, Joanna, most of the time we've spent on this has been in other business. I mean, we were done at probably 8 o'clock or 7:30 with the regular stuff, and we get to other business. It happened last meeting too, and the things that seem to take this is going to be quick end up taking a long time.
Yep, that's true. Okay. Let's try it out this way and see how it goes. And then for the annual boards and committees workshop, I don't recall what we did. I know in the past we've done this around budget season, but you're talking about something different.
Yeah. We actually pulled off on it was either Thursdays or Tuesdays. We did a few kind of in a row and we packed them a little fuller. So we
Yeah.
only, I think we did two. Um, and they were a little bit longer. We did them a little bit more time. Chris Wolf was here. That was her brainchild. I thought they worked quite well. Let me just pull it up real quick.
So I guess I'm confused about the question. Should the annual workshop include all boards and committees or only those who have participated in previous years?
Oh, yeah. So this is coming out of, there are some that we don't even give offers to, that there's just kind of a list of the ones do you want us to make offers to all of them?
Can you give me an example of who we don't offer it to?
Um,
Cable Advisory Board.
yeah, cable advisory, it would be, the library board of trustees. Um,
Police advisory.
yep.
We had the chair come last year.
Not during, oh yeah, Mark Devine. Did he come? Yep. I think those are the Hunter Road Fields. I don't believe they came. We offered them.
Winslow Park Commission.
Yep.
I mean, we meet with staff, but
Yeah, came and
Yeah.
talked.
We don't ask the project review board or we do planning board. Sam
Yeah.
comes, but we don't.
This should be, I think, the boards that interface with the public. We need to tell them what we need to do, right? I mean, the Conservation Commission, they're taking care of the trails. The Police Advisory Board is taking care of the police. People don't typically go to them, but the planning board, the complete streets can have a big impact. Right? Those are the committees that I mean, everyone should be able to come, but those are the committees that we should have a workshop with and make sure we're all on the same page, right?
Yeah, because I think you're onto something where you think about like the purpose of these workshops. And I think it can be as simple as we're looking for just like a touch point to make sure we know what's going on with each other, the council and the committees are talking and like have alignment. And if that's the case, then yeah, it should be offered to everybody. I mean, like cable advisory board probably won't have much to share, but like it should be offered across the board.
Yeah, talking with Greg Mishu, who's the chair of that board, I think there is some question about maybe the charge there. So that could be a really good one. Caroline is saying that she thinks that you guys stopped Project Review Board because of potential interference with applications. So like you have the pure quasi regulatory judicial ones like Project Review Board, the Appeals Board, the Local Board of Assessment Review, where it really isn't about town policy. It's about looking at an appeal or a project and applying ordinances. But they're volunteers.
Yeah. And I still think you could still have a conversation about.
Yep.
Yeah, not necessarily interfering with them, but tell them here, it's not your opinion that you're on the appeals board. It's not your opinion that we're after. We're looking, did they have the facts to do, where are they looking? It's not, is this job right for the town? That's not their job. The job is to say the planning board and the project review board had enough information to come to this decision. Nothing was hidden. the process was correct, right? Or
I
the
think
process was followed.
with a little bit of framing, I think there's benefit in having those conversations and being careful not to tread on.
So
Right.
yeah, so Chris, usually once you have the schedule set for that, and why don't we plan to put hold 3 or 4 dates for that?
Yep.
Once you have the schedule for that, we'll ask Chris to send out invitations
Mhm.
to folks and then start filling it in, and then we could talk about, there will be some areas that we need to be careful about. We can frame it as we get there.
Sounds good
For
to me.
some, I just want to add, like for background, PRB used to come and report on annual projects reviewed, so it was more of like a look back report to council because you all know about the big ones, but you don't always know the things in between. And then I think we could easily frame it, are there issues or things you've had challenges with the ordinances, stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that essentially having a touch point with every group of folks that are volunteers or appointed or anybody who's doing anything acting on behalf of the town, I think we should have an opportunity to simply have a conversation and for them to be able to share what are they working on, what are their concerns. I know a lot of the conversations we have because it's around budget time are, do you have the resources you need or what are you looking for? But I think in terms of folks in those groups simply being able to share what their experience is, what are they hearing, what are they seeing, what are their thoughts is valuable for us as we consider everything else that we're doing.
Yeah. And it's exactly why we interview everybody for appointments. It's the same reason. All right, that sounds good.
One thing related but slightly different. In a few instances in the past, we've had people from different committees be in the same place at the same time discussing town stuff. And every time we've done that, we've always gotten really positive feedback that says this was a great opportunity for me to learn what's going on in the other committees. So, for instance, make stuff up. When we had planning and project review work together, that was very well received. In our roles, we know what's going on with everything, but they don't know what's going on with each other. So people who are involved with Depot Street stuff might not be the same people that are involved in Silver Bullet stuff, which are not the same people that are involved in Hunter Road stuff. So to invite the chairs from each committee to some kind of a forum once a year or so to say, hey, by the way, this is what's going on, and hear from each other. The times we've done it, it's been well received. So maybe something we could talk about when we do goal setting or some other planning activities, but something like that I think would be well received.
Can I just, for clarification, would you want 3 to 4 additional dates, or would I possibly utilize what we set aside for a workshop for the board and committee?
I think that would take up a lot of those workshop slots.
Yeah, Chris, I think you and I can work on this and we might have option A, option B for them. Just
And just another thought too on that is we were talking about how like with Winslow Park, it's usually Neil. Can we make sure there's also a committee
Yep.
in there as well
Yep.
for those kinds of boards and committees? All right. Anything else?
Yeah, I think we make a motion, we adjourn.
All right.
Second.
Seconded, and I think we're going to just do an all in favor.
Aye.
All right. Good night, folks.